There is a certain kind of weariness that has little to do with the body. It's a tiredness of the soul. It settles in on a Tuesday afternoon, in the middle of a traffic jam, with the radio murmuring about crises you cannot solve, and your phone buzzing with demands you are expected to meet. It's the feeling of being pulled in 1,000 different directions, a constant, low-grade hum of anxiety that has become the soundtrack to our lives. We are told to hustle, to optimize, to achieve, to become more. And so we push, we strive, we carry the weight of yesterday's regrets and tomorrow's fears, piling them onto our shoulders until we can barely stand. Imagine for a moment you are holding a single smooth stone in the palm of your hand. At first, it feels light, insignificant. But what if you were told you could never put it down, that you had to clench your fist around it, day and night, through meals, through conversations, through sleep? Soon, your muscles would ache, your attention would be consumed by the stone. Your entire existence would revolve around the tension of holding on. The stone itself isn't the problem. The problem is the clenching. The problem is the inability to simply open your hand. Our pains, our anxieties, our resentments, they are these stones. We have been clenching them for so long, we've forgotten what it feels like to have an open hand. We believe the struggle is noble. We believe the tension is necessary. This journey we are about to embark upon together is an invitation to gently and without judgment explore the possibility of opening your hand. For the next few hours, we will step away from the noise. We will not seek to fight the chaos of the world, but to find a quiet, unshakable center within it. We will turn to a tradition that has spent over 2,000 years studying the nature of the human mind, not as a subject of dogma, but as a living, breathing experience. This is the path of Mahayana Buddhism, a path of great compassion and of vast wisdom. It does not ask you to believe in anything, only to listen, to consider, to look inward with a gentle curiosity. The stories you will hear are not just ancient tales. They are maps, they are mirrors, they are keys, designed to unlock the chambers in our own hearts that have been closed for far too long. So take a slow, deep breath. Allow your shoulders to soften. There is nothing you need to do right now, nothing you need to fix. There is only this moment, this sound. 1. The empty boat and the nature of anger. We will begin our journey together by exploring one of the most powerful and often most destructive emotions known to humankind: anger. Let us first be honest with ourselves about its nature. Anger is a fire. It feels electric, searing, and in its own strange way, deeply clarifying. In a world that often feels confusing and chaotic, anger can provide a momentary, blazing certainty. It arrives with a story, a narrative in which we are the righteous, the wronged, the victim, and someone or something is the villain. This story feels true. It feels solid. We feel it in our bodies. The sudden heat rising in our chest, the tightening of our jaw, the clenching of our fists, the blood pounding in our ears. Our world narrows. Our focus sharpens onto the object of our rage. It is a powerful, intoxicating force. We believe, with every fiber of our being, that our anger is caused by the external world. The driver who cut us off in traffic is the cause. The colleague who undermined us in a meeting is the cause. The partner who said the careless, hurtful word is the cause. The injustice we read about online is the cause. We see a direct, unbroken line from the external event to our internal emotional explosion. We see ourselves as passive reactors to a world full of provocations. And because we feel wronged, our anger feels justified. It feels like a right. We hold on to it. We stoke its flames with our thoughts, replaying the offense over and over, because in a world where we feel powerless, anger can give us a fleeting, illusory sense of strength and control. But does it? Or does it, in fact, cede all our power to the world outside ourselves? Does it make us a leaf in the wind, tossed about by the actions and words of others? There is an ancient Chan, or Zen, story that gently but profoundly dismantles this entire perception. It invites us to look much deeper, past the surface flames, to the true source of the fire. Imagine a man, perhaps not so different from you or I, who felt the deep weariness of constant striving and agitation. He sought a moment of true peace, a sanctuary from the noise of his own mind. He decided to take his small boat out onto a vast, mist-shrouded lake in the quiet solitude of early dawn. The air was cool and still. The only sound was the gentle, rhythmic dipping of his paddle into the water. He rowed out to the very center of the lake, a place where the shore was just a distant, blurry line. Here, he felt, he could be truly alone. He laid his paddle down, closed his eyes, and began to meditate. He focused on his breath, feeling the rise and fall of his chest. Slowly, the frantic energy of his thoughts began to settle. The tight knots of worry in his shoulders began to loosen. For a few precious moments, he touched a state of profound stillness. There was only the gentle rocking of the boat, the cool mist on his skin, the vast, silent peace of the lake. And then, a sudden, jarring thud. His eyes snapped open. The peace was shattered. Another boat had collided with his. Immediately, the fire ignited. A wave of hot irritation washed over him. Who could be so foolish? He thought, his mind already beginning to spin its righteous story. To be so careless and clumsy in the middle of this enormous empty lake, to have so little respect for another's solitude. The irritation quickly curdled into full-blown anger. He turned his head, his mouth already forming the sharp, accusatory words he was ready to hurl at the thoughtless person who had ruined his one chance at peace. He turned, and he saw that the other boat was empty. He stared. There was no careless sailor, no malicious intruder, no one to blame. It was a simple, empty vessel, perhaps one that had broken free from its mooring on the distant shore and had been carried silently by the gentle, invisible currents of the lake. It had no intention. It had no awareness. It was just a thing, an object, drifting where the water took it. And in that moment of seeing, something profound happened within the man. The entire structure of his anger, which had felt so solid, so justified, so real, just a second before, instantly collapsed into nothing. It vanished. The heat in his chest cooled, the tension in his jaw released, the story in his head dissolved. The situation had not changed. His boat was still struck, his meditation was still disturbed, but the anger was gone. It had nowhere to land, nowhere to attach. He was left in the silence of the lake, staring at the empty boat, with a sudden, breathtaking realization. The anger was never in the other boat. The anger was in him. It was there all along, a coiled potential, a reservoir of frustration waiting for a target. The empty boat did not create his anger. It merely bumped into him and revealed the anger that was already there. This story is a mirror held up to the very mechanics of our own minds. Every day, in countless ways, we are shouting at empty boats. The person who cuts us off in traffic isn't a villain in a grand drama about you. They are an empty boat, drifting in their own current of being late for work. of having a fight with their spouse, of being lost in a distracting thought. Their world, in that moment, does not contain you. The colleague who took credit for your idea is an empty boat, adrift on a sea of their own deep insecurity and desperate need for approval. The critical comment left by a stranger online is the very definition of an empty boat, a vessel containing someone else's loneliness, boredom, or pain that has simply drifted across your screen. When we react with rage, we are not seeing reality. We are seeing our own projections. We are taking a neutral event, a collection of words, an action by another rand. We are infusing it with a story of personal attack. The Mahayana path calls the wisdom to see beyond this story. Prajna. Prajna is not about suppressing the feeling of anger. The feeling is a real, valid, human experience. To deny it is a form of self-violence. The wisdom of prajna is the ability to create a tiny space of awareness between the external event and our internal reaction. It is the ability to separate the raw data, a boat bumped me, from the ego's interpretation, someone attacked me. When that feeling of anger arises, we can learn to use it as a signal, as an alarm bell. Instead of immediately looking outward for someone to blame, we can, for just one moment, turn our attention inward. We can ask the question, inspired by the man on the lake, is this a real threat, or am I shouting at an empty boat? This single question is an act of profound self-compassion. It stops the cycle of blame. It brings the power back to you. You are no longer a victim of circumstance, but an observer of your own mind. When you ask this question, you begin to realize that the intensity of your anger is often disproportionate to the actual event. The event is just the spark. The real fuel is the vast reservoir of pre-existing tension we carry within us. It's the stress from our jobs, the anxiety about our finances, the unhealed wounds from our childhood, the fear of not being good enough. We walk around carrying a full bucket of gasoline, and then when someone lights a match, we blame them for the explosion. The empty boat teaches us that the real work is not to try and police all the matches in the world, an impossible and exhausting task. The real work is to begin, slowly and gently, to empty our own bucket. This realization is the gateway to compassion. When you no longer see the other person as a malicious villain, but as another empty boat, adrift on their own troubled waters, your heart can soften. You don't have to condone their action. You don't have to become their friend, but you can release yourself from the poisonous, self-inflicted torment of your own rage. You can see their behavior not as a reflection of your worth, but as a reflection of their own suffering. This shift from personal offense to compassionate understanding is the beginning of true freedom. The practice then is this. The next time you feel the fire of anger begin to rise, try to catch it. See it for what it is. Acknowledge its presence without judgment. Ah, anger is here. Then, take one conscious breath. In that breath, create the space to ask, what empty boat have I just hit? See if you can look at the person or situation with new eyes, not as an aggressor, but as an object adrift. This is not easy. We have been practicing rage for our entire lives, but every time we remember to do this, we weaken the habit of reactivity. We reclaim a piece of our own inner peace. The world will always be full of drifting boats. We cannot control the currents, but we can learn to sit in our own vessel with a spacious, steady, and compassionate heart, knowing that the ultimate source of our storm and the ultimate source of our calm is always and only within. 2. The farmer's horse and the illusion of control. Let us now turn our attention to one of the most fundamental anxieties of our modern age, the desperate need for control. We have built our lives, and indeed our entire society, on the foundational belief that with enough effort, enough planning, and enough data, we can bend the future to our will. We fill our calendars, create 5-year plans, and track every metric of our existence, from our heart rate to our investment portfolios. We follow life hacks and productivity gurus, all in a relentless pursuit of optimization, believing that if we can just arrange all the pieces on the board correctly, we can guarantee a victory of happiness and security. This quest for certainty becomes a kind of prison. We live in a state of constant, low-grade vigilance, trying to anticipate every risk, to mitigate every potential deviation from our master plan. And because of this, we live in a state of profound fear of the unexpected. When life, in its wild and untamable way, inevitably throws a storm our way, we don't just see it as a challenge, we see it as a personal failure. We failed to predict it. We failed to prevent it. Our carefully constructed reality shatters, and we are left feeling powerless and anxious. The core of this suffering is our habit of immediate and absolute judgment. The moment something happens, our mind rushes to slap a label on it. This is good. This is bad. We pronounce these verdicts with the authority of a Supreme Court judge, as if we are standing on a high mountaintop, able to see the entire, sprawling map of cause and effect from the beginning of time to its end. But our true position is not on the mountaintop. We are walking a winding path deep within the valley. We can only see as far as the next bend, and we have no idea what lies beyond it. The wisdom to not only accept this, but to find peace within it, is the heart of a timeless story, a parable from the Taoist tradition that has been deeply embraced by Mahayana thought for its profound insight into the nature of reality. It is the story of an old farmer and his horse. In a small, remote village nestled among the northern mountains, there lived an old farmer. He was not a man of wealth or status, but he possessed a quiet contentment that puzzled his neighbors. His greatest material possession was a single beautiful stallion, which he used for plowing his fields and which was the envy of the village. One morning, the farmer went to the stable and found it empty. The horse had broken through the fence and run away into the wild mountains. Immediately, the news spread through the village, and all his neighbors came to his small home to offer their condolences. They clicked their tongues and shook their heads. "Oh, what a terrible disaster," they said. "To lose your only horse, your greatest asset. This is truly bad luck." The old farmer listened to their outpouring of sympathy with a calm and patient expression. When they were finished, he simply looked at them and replied softly, "Maybe. We will see." The villagers left, muttering to each other about how the old man must be addled with grief. A few weeks passed. Then one evening, the farmer heard the sound of hoofbeats. He looked out and saw his horse returning from the mountains, and it was not alone. It was leading a herd of a dozen magnificent wild horses, which it had befriended in the wilderness. In an instant, the farmer went from having no horse to having a whole stable full. The villagers, hearing the news, rushed to his house again, their faces beaming. "What incredible fortune!" they exclaimed, slapping him on the back. "Your horse running away was a blessing in disguise. You are a rich man now. This is truly good luck." The old farmer, busy trying to corral the new horses, simply smiled his quiet smile and said, "Maybe. We will see." His only son, a strong and capable young man, was excited by the challenge of these new animals. He began the difficult work of taming one of the wild stallions, but the horse was powerful and fiercely resisted. It reared up, throwing the son to the ground with great force. The farmer heard his son's cry of pain and rushed out to find him lying in the dust, his leg bent at an unnatural angle. It was badly broken. Once again, the villagers gathered. Their faces were now masks of pity and tragedy. "Oh, what a curse," they lamented. "This wealth has brought you only sorrow. Your son, now crippled for life. This is the worst luck of all." The farmer, sitting by his son's bedside, looked up at their sorrowful faces and said, with the same unshakable equanimity, "Maybe. We will see." Not a month later, the emperor's army came marching into the village. A brutal war had broken out in a distant province, and they were forcibly conscripting every single able-bodied young man to be sent to the front lines. It was a battle from which few were expected to return. The soldiers went from house to house, taking the sons of every family. There was weeping and wailing throughout the village as boys were torn from their parents' arms. When the soldiers arrived at the old farmer's house, they saw his son lying on his cot, his leg bound in splints. They took one look at his useless limb, declared him unfit for service, and marched on. He was spared, and as the other villagers wept for their lost sons, they finally looked at the old farmer and his broken-legged boy, and for the first time, they began to understand the depth of his wisdom. This story is a direct challenge to the way our minds work. We are the villagers. We are addicted to labeling, to judging, to seeking the finality of a conclusion. We do this because uncertainty is terrifying. It is far more comfortable to label a job loss, a disaster, or a new relationship a blessing, because it gives us a story, a framework, to make sense of the chaos. The farmer's wisdom lies in his refusal to write these premature stories. His phrase, "Maybe, we will see," is not a sign of apathy or fatalism. It is one of the most powerful spiritual practices imaginable. It is the active, courageous embrace of not knowing. It is a profound expression of humility, an acknowledgement that the web of reality is infinitely more complex and interconnected than our small minds can ever hope to comprehend. This connects directly to the Mahayana Buddhist concept of shunyata, often translated as emptiness. This is one of the most misunderstood teachings. Emptiness does not mean that nothing exists. It means that things are empty of a fixed, separate, independent, and inherent nature. The event of the horse running away is empty of being inherently bad. The event of the son breaking his leg is empty of being inherently a tragedy. The quality we assign to an event is not in the event itself. It is a projection from our limited viewpoint. The goodness or badness of an event is dependent on an infinite web of causes and conditions that are constantly shifting and unfolding through time. Think of it like rain. Is rain good or bad? To a farmer whose crops are dying of drought, the rain is a miracle, a blessing. To a family on their way to a picnic, the rain is a nuisance, a curse. The rain itself is just rain. It is empty of inherent good or bad. Its quality is relational, conditional. The farmer's wisdom was in understanding that all events in life are like this rain. He treated fortune and misfortune with the same spacious curiosity, allowing life to reveal its nature without forcing his own judgments upon it. The practice inspired by this story is a radical act of trust. It is not trust in a specific outcome, but trust in the process of life itself. It is about learning to hold our plans, our hopes, and our fears with a lighter touch. When you find yourself in a situation that you have labeled terrible, can you create a small space for the farmer's wisdom? Can you hold the pain and the difficulty without adding the second layer of suffering? The story that this is a permanent, catastrophe? Can you whisper to yourself, "This hurts, this is difficult, and maybe we will see"? This doesn't mean we become passive. The farmer still cared for his son. We still work to improve our lives and the lives of others. But we release our white-knuckled grip on the outcome. We do our best, and we let go of the rest. We relinquish the immense and exhausting burden of needing to be the all-knowing controller of the universe. In doing so, we gain something far more precious than control. We gain freedom. The freedom to be present with life as it actually is, not as we demand it to be. The freedom to find peace not by manipulating the world, but by changing our relationship to it. By letting go of the illusion of control, we open ourselves up to the vast, mysterious, and often surprisingly graceful unfolding of reality. 3. The useless tree and finding your own value. We now arrive at a very subtle but pervasive form of suffering, a quiet anxiety that hums beneath the surface of our modern lives. It is the tyranny of utility. From our earliest days, we are placed on a conveyor belt of purpose. We are asked, not "Who are you?" or "What brings you joy?" but "What do you want to be when you grow up?" The question itself implies that our being is insufficient. We must become something useful. Our identity becomes fused with our function. The first question at any social gathering is almost always, "So, what do you do?" We are sized up, categorized, and valued based on our answer. Our worth becomes conditional, measured by our productivity, our efficiency, our contribution to the gross domestic product. This relentless pressure to be useful creates a deep-seated fear of being useless. We come to see ourselves as a collection of resources to be managed and optimized. We feel a nagging guilt when we are not producing, when we are simply resting or engaging in a hobby that has no path to monetization. We have internalized the voice of a ruthless efficiency expert who audits our every moment. We look at the parts of ourselves that are quirky, gentle, non-linear, or unconventional, and we see them as flaws. We see them as knots in the wood, as crooked branches that must be pruned away so we can become the straight, strong timber that society values, the timber perfect for building its bridges and its boardrooms. We begin the painful process of contorting ourselves to fit a mold that was never designed for our unique soul. And in doing so, we become profoundly alienated from the very essence of who we are. There is a beautiful and liberating story from the Taoist sage Zhuangzi, whose profound insights have long been woven into the fabric of Zen Buddhism. It speaks directly to this fear of uselessness and offers a radical redefinition of value. A master carpenter and his young apprentice were traveling through the countryside. They came upon a village shrine where an enormous, ancient tree was growing. It was a spectacular sight. Its trunk was so massive, it would take 100 people holding hands to encircle it. Its canopy was so vast and high, it cast enough shade to shelter 1,000 oxen, creating a cool, dark sanctuary from the hot sun. The apprentice was utterly captivated, staring at it in awe. "Master," he whispered, "I have followed you for years and have seen many forests, but I have never seen a tree of such magnificence. This is truly the king of all trees." The master carpenter, however, barely gave the tree a passing glance. He simply grunted and continued walking without even breaking his stride. The apprentice was baffled. He ran to catch up. "Master, why do you show such disrespect? Why would you not even look at such a perfect specimen?" The carpenter stopped and turned. "That tree," he said with disdain, "is completely worthless. It is a useless tree. Its wood is gnarled and full of knots, You cannot cut a single straight plank from it. If you try to build a boat from its wood, it will quickly rot. If you try to carve a pillar, it will be riddled with wormholes. If you try to make a coffin, it will decompose before you can bury it. It produces no fruit. It serves no purpose. Do not be fooled by its size. It is utterly and completely useless. That, the carpenter concluded, is the only reason it has been allowed to live for so long. The apprentice was silenced, his mind trying to reconcile the tree's majesty with its apparent worthlessness. That evening, after they had settled in at an inn, the great tree appeared to the carpenter in a dream. Its leaves rustled, and a wise, ancient voice spoke. "Why do you compare me to your cultivated trees?" it asked. "The cherry, the pear, the orangeal, the trees that produce valuable fruit, they live a hard life. Their fruit makes them a target. People tear at their branches and abuse them to get the fruit, and their lives are often shortened. The same is true for the trees with straight, strong timber. They are measured and assessed their whole lives, and as soon as they are deemed useful, they meet the blade of your axe. You see their usefulness as a virtue, but for them, it is their downfall. As for me," the great tree continued, "I have been practicing the art of being useless my entire life. I made my wood crooked and my grain unusable. This is what has protected me. It is because I am useless to you that I have been able to fulfill my own destiny, to grow to this great age and to offer this cool, deep shade to countless weary travelers, to shelter the birds in my branches, and to be a home for the spirits of this land. You see my uselessness and call me worthless. You are blind to the fact that my uselessness is my greatest utility. What use is your usefulness if it leads only to you being cut down in your prime?" The carpenter awoke with a start, a deep understanding dawning in his heart. He had spent his whole life measuring the world with a ruler, but the tree had just taught him about the immeasurable. This story is a powerful medicine for the modern soul. We have all been trained to be the carpenter, looking at ourselves and the world through a narrow lens of utility. We carry an internal checklist of what makes a person valuable: a good job, a nice house, a productive schedule. But the story invites us to connect with the tree within us. It asks us to consider that our greatest strengths, our most profound gifts to the world, may lie in the very qualities we have dismissed as useless. This resonates deeply with the Mahayana teaching of our innate Buddha nature, or Tathagatagarbha. This is the teaching that within every single living being, without exception, there exists a fundamental nature that is already perfect, complete, and enlightened. It is not something we have to build, earn, or achieve. It is our birthright. It is the great, gnarled, ancient tree of our true being, which exists beneath all the layers of conditioning, fear, and self-judgment. Our spiritual path is not about becoming a more useful piece of timber. It is the work of unlearning all the false, limiting beliefs we have about ourselves, so that the magnificent inherent nature of the tree can be revealed in its full glory. The practice inspired by this story is one of radical self-inquiry and self-acceptance. It is to begin to look upon ourselves with the eyes of the tree, not the carpenter. Take a moment to consider the parts of your personality you have labeled as flaws or weaknesses. Your sensitivity, your tendency to daydream, your inability to be ruthless in business, your quietness in a loud world, your passion for a pointless hobby. Now, ask a different question. What is the shade that this useless quality provides? Perhaps your sensitivity, which the world might call a weakness, is what allows you to be a deeply compassionate friend, providing the shade of emotional safety for others. Perhaps your tendency to daydream, which a productivity expert would call a waste of time, is the very source of your creativity and innovative ideas, the shade of inspiration. Perhaps your quietness is not a social defect, but a gift of calm presence, the shade of tranquility in a frantic world. The carpenter's mind sees a gnarled branch and calls it a defect. The tree's wisdom knows that this very twist is what allows the branch to reach the sunlight in its own unique way. Your so-called flaws are not mistakes in your design. They are the evidence of your soul's unique journey. They are what make you, you. They are the source of your irreplaceable shade. To embrace your uselessness is a revolutionary act of self-love. It is to give yourself permission to exist without constantly justifying your right to be here. It means allowing yourself to rest without guilt. It means spending an afternoon doing something you love for no other reason than that it makes your heart sing. It means honoring the artist, the dreamer, the mystic, and the quiet observer within you, not just the worker and the producer. In a world exhausted from the relentless pressure to be useful, the gift of your authentic presence, your unique and unquantifiable shade, may be the most profoundly useful gift you could ever offer. You are not a project to be optimized. You are a magnificent, ancient tree. Your value is not in what you do, but in who you are. 4. 2 monks and a woman at the river. The burden of yesterday. Of all the immense weights we choose to carry through our lives, perhaps none are heavier, nor more illusory than the burdens of yesterday. Consider for a moment the architecture of your own mind. How much of its precious space is occupied by events that are already over? A mistake you made a decade ago can surface and make you physically cringe in the present moment. A cutting remark someone made to you last year can still have the power to sour your mood today. A past failure can loom like a ghost in the boardroom of your mind, whispering doubts and fears as you try to build a new future. We become curators of our own personal museums of grievance and regret, walking through the galleries day after day, polishing the displays, ensuring the painful memories never lose their luster. This is a profoundly human form of suffering. We walk through the vibrant, sunlit garden of the present moment, but our eyes are fixed on a faded, black and white photograph of the past. We are not just remembering, we are reliving. We are dragging the anchor of what has been through the fresh soil of what is. This clinging, this refusal to put down what is already gone, is exhausting. It drains our energy, colors our perceptions, and robs us of the simple joy of being alive. We often believe this carrying is necessary. We believe nurturing a grievance honors our pain, or that endlessly replaying a mistake is a form of penance. But what if it is simply a habit, a deeply ingrained mental pattern that we have the power to change? This very human predicament is captured with piercing clarity and beautiful simplicity in a classic Zen story. 2 monks, one senior and one junior, were on a long pilgrimage. They walked for many miles each day, relying on the charity of strangers for their food and sleeping in temples or under the stars. The senior monk was a man of deep, calm, and quiet wisdom. The junior monk was earnest, devout, and a very strict follower of the monastic rules he had spent years memorizing. Their order had many precepts, one of which was a strict prohibition against touching a woman. One afternoon, their path was blocked by a river. Heavy rains in the mountains had turned the normally gentle stream into a raging, muddy torrent. The current was strong, and the water was deep. On the riverbank stood a young woman dressed in a beautiful silk kimono. She was clearly distressed. She needed to get to the other side for a family emergency, but she was afraid to enter the turbulent water. knowing it would ruin her fine clothes and, more importantly, that she could easily be swept away. She wrung her hands, looking back and forth with growing panic. The junior monk, seeing her, immediately thought of the rule. He averted his gaze, stood at a proper distance, and felt a sense of righteous piety. The senior monk, however, simply walked up to the distraught woman. Without a single word, he assessed the situation, bent down, and hoisted her onto his strong back. He then waded firmly and carefully into the churning river, navigating the strong current. The woman clung to him, safe above the water. He carried her all the way to the far bank and set her down gently. She bowed deeply, her face filled with gratitude, and then hurried on her way. The senior monk then waded back across the river to his companion. He nodded, and the two monks resumed their journey in silence. But the silence was now heavy and charged. The junior monk was reeling. He couldn't believe what he had just witnessed. His master, a man he revered, had flagrantly broken one of their most sacred precepts. He hadn't just touched a woman. He had held her, carried her, in the most intimate way. An internal storm of judgment and indignation began to brew within him. For the next several hours, as they walked through beautiful forests and past tranquil rice paddies, the junior monk was in agony. The beauty of the world around him was invisible. The peaceful companionship of his master was gone, replaced by a wall of silent accusation. In his mind, he was no longer on the path. He was back at the river, replaying the scene over and over. He composed speeches of condemnation. He argued with his master in his head. He felt the heat of his own righteousness burning in his chest, a self-inflicted torment that grew heavier with every step. Finally, as evening approached and they could see the temple where they would spend the night, he could bear it no longer. He stopped, turned to his master, and the words burst out of him. "Master," he said, his voice trembling with pent-up fury, "I cannot remain silent any longer. How could you do that? You know as well as I do that our rules forbid us from even making eye contact with a woman, let alone touching one. And you picked one up and carried her on your back like a common laborer. You have disgraced our tradition. How could you?" The old monk stopped and looked at his young, agitated companion. His eyes were not filled with defensiveness or anger, but with a vast and gentle compassion. A soft smile touched his lips. He looked at the junior monk, and then he said, very quietly and very calmly, "Brother, I put that woman down by the river hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" This question is one of the most profound and liberating questions in all of spiritual literature. It cuts through thousands of years of human conditioning. The senior monk and the junior monk represent two possible ways of being, two aspects of our own minds. The senior monk is our potential for enlightened awareness. He was fully present at the river. He saw a need, and he responded with direct, uncomplicated compassion, which he understood to be a higher law than any written rule. The moment was real, his action was appropriate, and when the moment was over, it was over. He left the woman and the entire event on the riverbank where it belonged. His mind was free, light, and present for the next step of the journey. The junior monk is our ordinary, conditioned mind. He is trapped in a web of rules, concepts, judgments, and attachments. He was not truly present. He experienced the event at the river through a thick filter of shoulds and should-nots, and long after the event was finished, he clung to his mental image of it. The woman was not the burden. His idea of the woman, his judgment of the master's action, his attachment to the broken rule that was the impossibly heavy burden he chose to carry for miles and miles. His suffering was entirely self-created. We are all the young monk. What woman are we still carrying from our past? Is it the grudge against a family member who wronged us 5 years ago? Every time we replay their offense, we are picking her up again. Is it the shame of a business failure from our youth? Every time we allow that memory to stop us from taking a new risk, we are hoisting her onto our back. Is it the pain of a relationship that ended? Every time we indulge in the bitter story of what they did to us, we are refusing to put her down. We are carrying a whole crowd of ghosts, and we wonder why we are so spiritually and emotionally exhausted. The Mahayana teaching of non-attachment, anupadana, is not about being cold, distant, or uncaring. Look at the senior monkey, was the embodiment of warm, engaged compassion. Non-attachment is the practice of not clinging. It is the ability to participate fully and authentically in the dance of life, to love, to work, to feel, to act and then to let go gracefully when the music changes. It is to understand that life is a flowing river, not a static photograph. To cling to the past is to try and build a dam in the middle of that river. It's a fight against the fundamental nature of reality, and it is a fight we will always lose. The practice, then, is the conscious and repeated act of putting the woman down. When you find your mind caught in the familiar, painful loop of a past grievance or regret, the first step is to simply recognize it, to name it without judgment. Ah, the mind is doing its thing again. I am carrying the woman. This simple act of naming creates a space. It shifts you from being the protagonist in the drama to being the calm observer of the mind's habits. Then, you can use your breath as a tool of release. Take one conscious, deep breath. As you exhale, make the conscious intention to set the story down. You can visualize yourself leaving it on the riverbank. You don't have to fight the thought or push it away. You just cease to engage with it. You withdraw your energy from it, and then you bring your attention firmly back to the only reality you have, the present moment. Feel the chair beneath you. Notice the light in the room. Hear the sounds around you. This is where life is. The past is a memory. The future is a fantasy. This moment is the only thing that is real. You may have to do this 100 times a day. The habit of carrying is strong, but every time you do it, you are exercising a new muscle, the muscle of letting go, the muscle of presence. The senior monk was free, not because nothing bad ever happened to him, but because he had mastered the art of non-clinging. His peace was not dependent on a perfect world, but on a liberated mind. The question his story leaves for us is this: what are you carrying today that you could have put down hours, days, or years ago? Isn't it time to let it go? The river is behind you. The path is ahead. Walk on. 5. The gift of a single coin and the nature of true generosity. We live in a world where generosity is often measured by the decibel level of its announcement. We see the names of billionaires emblazoned on university buildings and hospital wings. We witness fundraising galas where the size of a donation is broadcast for all to applaud. In this landscape, the act of giving can become entangled with ego, reputation, and public relations. It can become a performance. This grand scale of philanthropy, while often achieving great good, can have a subtle, disheartening effect on the rest of us. It can foster the belief that true generosity is a game only the wealthy can play. It can lead an ordinary person to look at the small offering they are able to make and think, what difference can this possibly make? My contribution is just a drop in an endless ocean. It is insignificant. And in that moment of perceived inadequacy, the beautiful, natural human impulse to give can wither and die. Furthermore, our giving often becomes transactional. We give with at least a subtle expectation of a return. We might expect a thank you, a public acknowledgement, a feeling of self-satisfaction, or even a kind of cosmic credit, a deposit in our karmic bank account. We give in order to get. This subtle contamination of motive, this slight hook of expectation, can rob the act of its purest power and joy. The Buddhist tradition, especially in its Mahayana expression, offers a radical and deeply empowering alternative. It teaches that the value of a gift is not measured by its size, but by the vastness of the heart from which it is offered. This is illustrated nowhere more powerfully than in the story of a poor old woman during the time of the Buddha. The scene is a monastery where the Buddha is residing. A great ceremony of offering, or dana, is underway. The local king, powerful ministers, and incredibly wealthy merchants have all come to make donations to the Buddha and his community of monks. The monastery courtyard is a spectacular sight, a testament to material abundance. There are cartloads of the finest polished rice, enormous bolts of shimmering silk, ornate chests filled with medicinal herbs, and hundreds of magnificent, gleaming brass lamps, each filled with expensive, fragrant oil. An atmosphere of pride and subtle competition hangs in the air, as each patron tries to outdo the last, their gazes lingering on the grandeur of their own gifts. Watching from the dusty edge of the crowd is a very old, destitute woman. Her clothes are threadbare, her body is frail from a lifetime of hardship, and she possesses nothing in the world. But as she watches the Buddha, her heart overflows with a pure and powerful faith. A single, intense desire consumes her to make an offering of light to the Enlightened One. With this resolve burning in her heart, she goes out into the city to beg. For the entire day, she endures scorn and indifference, holding out her trembling hand, until finally, by late afternoon, she has managed to collect a single, small, copper coin. It is almost worthless. She takes this single coin, the total sum of her day's labor and humility, to an oil merchant. "Sir," she says, her voice quiet but firm, "I wish to make an offering of light to the Buddha. This coin is all I have. Can you sell me a tiny measure of oil?" The merchant, accustomed to selling large quantities to wealthy households, looks down at her and is about to dismiss her. But then, he sees the fierce sincerity in her eyes, the sheer force of her devotion. Moved against his will, he gives her a small measure of oil, more than her coin actually paid for. The old woman takes the precious oil and a simple, cheap clay dish and returns to the monastery. By now, night has fallen, and the courtyard is ablaze with the light of 1,000 grand lamps. She finds a small, out-of-the-way corner, shielded from the wind, and carefully pours the oil into her dish. As she lights the simple wick, she brings her palms together and makes a silent, powerful vow in the depths of her heart. This vow is the very soul of the story. She does not pray for a better rebirth, for wealth, or for health. Instead, a wave of boundless compassion washes through her. She says to herself, "This offering is all I have. It is poor and small, but I offer it not for myself. May the merit of this single flame be for all living beings in all the worlds. May this light become a boundless light that shines into the darkest realms of existence, dispelling the shadows of ignorance and fear. May it help to liberate every single being from their suffering. For their sake, may I one day achieve ultimate enlightenment." Having made this profound dedication, a vow that embodies the very essence of the Bodhisattva ideal, she bows deeply and slips away into the night. Later that night, a furious storm arises. A powerful wind howls through the monastery grounds, and sheets of rain lash down from the heavens. One by one, the grand, magnificent lamps of the king and the wealthy merchants, exposed to the elements, sputter and die. The courtyard is plunged into darkness, save for one tiny, improbable light. In its sheltered corner, the flame of the old woman's lamp burns steadily. It dances in the wind, but it is not extinguished. It shines like a single, defiant star through the long, dark night. The next morning, the Buddha's foremost disciple in psychic powers, the great Mahayana, comes to clear away the lamps. He sees the single flame still burning and moves to put it out. He tries to snuff it with his fingers, but it continues to burn. Puzzled, he tries to smother it with the hem of his robe, but the flame remains, bright and unwavering. Growing frustrated, Mahayana, who could shake entire worlds with his power, uses his psychic abilities to summon a great gust of wind, enough to topple trees. The wind blasts the small lamp, but the flame barely flickers. He summons the mythical rains of a world's end, but not a single drop touches the flame. Exhausted and utterly bewildered, he seeks out the Buddha. "Lord," he says, "I cannot understand it. I have extinguished all the other lamps, but this one tiny flame defies all my power." The Buddha looks at him with a compassionate smile. "Mahayana," he says, "do not try. You could summon all the waters of the 4 great oceans, and you would not be able to quench that flame. You could summon the cosmic wind that ends a world cycle, and you would still not be able to put it out. Do you know why? Because that lamp was not lit with a small coin and a cheap measure of oil. That lamp was lit with a mind of absolute sincerity and fueled by a vow of boundless compassion for all living beings. The gifts of the king and the merchants were large in material form, but they were given with minds of pride, competition, and expectation. Their hearts were small. This old woman, who you see as poor, gave with a heart as vast as the universe itself. Her gift was total. Therefore, its merit is immeasurable, and its light inextinguishable. This story completely revolutionizes our understanding of generosity. The Buddhist teaching of dana paramita, the perfection of giving, is not primarily about the gift itself, but about the purity of the intention, or cetana, behind it. The true value lies in the mind of the giver. The woman's offering was so powerful because it was free from the 3 poisons of greed. She expected nothing in return. Hatred, it was an act of pure love. And ignorance, she understood it was for the benefit of all, not just herself. Her act was a spontaneous manifestation of bodhicitta, the awakened heart that strives for the liberation of all. This teaching is a profound source of empowerment. It means that your capacity for profound generosity has absolutely nothing to do with the size of your bank account. You can be the world's greatest philanthropist in this very moment. The practice is to shift your focus from the what of giving to the why and how. The gift of your full, undivided, compassionate attention to a friend in pain is an inextinguishable lamp. The gift of a genuine smile to a stressed-out stranger is an inextinguishable lamp. The gift of silently wishing well to someone who is irritating you, instead of indulging in anger, is an inextinguishable lamp. The gift of withholding a harsh judgment, of offering forgiveness for a small slight, of truly listening without formulating your reply, these are acts of immense spiritual wealth. Before you give anything your time, your money, your energy, your attention, you can practice a momentary intention check. Ask yourself, why am I doing this? Can I release any expectation of gratitude or recognition? Can I offer this freely as a simple gift of kindness to the universe? When you give in this way, you discover one of the great secrets of the path. Selfless giving is a source of incredible joy. It connects you to others and dissolves the painful illusion of a separate, isolated self. The world is not changed by a few grand gestures. It is healed and illuminated by the countless, small, sincere offerings of millions of ordinary people who have discovered that their own heart is a source of inexhaustible wealth. You have that wealth. You are that light. 6. Is that so? The wisdom of an unruffled mind. We now venture into one of the most volatile territories of the human heart. Our relationship with the opinions of others. In our modern world, perhaps more than ever before, our inner peace has become a fragile commodity that we outsource to the world around us. We have become emotional yo-yos, jerked upwards by a word of praise, a promotion, a like on a social media post, only to be plunged downwards by a critical comment, a perceived slight, or the deafening silence of being ignored. Our sense of self-worth often feels like it is being traded on a public stock market, its value fluctuating wildly with each day's news. This is an exhausting way to live. It requires a state of constant vigilance, of performance, of careful reputation management. We become actors on a stage, terrified of forgetting our lines or receiving a bad review from an audience of our colleagues, our family, and even thousands of strangers we have never met. This addiction to approval and the corresponding terror of disapproval is a form of bondage. We hand the keys to our own emotional kingdom to everyone we meet, hoping they will be benevolent rulers. But the world is fickle, praise is fleeting, and blame is plentiful. By tethering our well-being to this external volatility, we condemn ourselves to a life of anxiety and instability. We seek an unshakable peace, but we try to build it on the most unstable ground imaginable, the shifting sands of public opinion. The Mahayana path, particularly through the sharp lens of Zen, offers a radical alternative. It suggests that true freedom, an unshakable peace, is not found by controlling what others think of us, but by radically changing our relationship to our own minds. This profound equanimity is perfectly embodied in a famous story about the great Japanese Zen master, Hakuin. Hakuin Ekaku was a pivotal figure in Zen Buddhism, known for his deep wisdom and his rigorous, dedicated practice. He lived a simple life, presiding over a small temple, and his reputation for impeccable integrity and profound insight was known throughout the region. He was, by all accounts, a pillar of his community. In the village near his temple lived a family who owned a food shop. One day, the shopkeeper and his wife made a devastating discovery. Their beautiful, unmarried daughter was pregnant. In the rigid social structure of the time, this was a catastrophe, a source of immense shame for the family. Furious and terrified, the parents confronted their daughter, demanding to know the name of the father. The young woman, desperate to protect her lover, a young man who worked at the local fish market, refused to say. But under relentless pressure, threats, and interrogation, she finally broke down. And in her desperation, she named the one person she thought was untouchable, perhaps believing his reputation was so great it would somehow absorb the scandal. She named the Zen master Hakuin. The parents exploded in a self-righteous fury. They stormed to the temple, barged in without ceremony, and confronted the master, who was quietly meditating. "You hypocrite!" they screamed, their voices filled with venom. "A so-called man of religion. You have taken advantage of our innocent daughter, ruined her life, and brought disgrace upon our entire family." They hurled every insult and accusation they could think of at him, their faces contorted with rage and contempt. The public shaming was brutal and absolute. Throughout this entire tirade, Hakuin remained perfectly still. He did not argue, protest, or offer a single word of defense. He simply sat there, his presence one of deep, oceanic calm. When the parents finally ran out of words, sputtering in their exhaustion, he looked at them with clear, untroubled eyes and said, very softly, "Is that so?" His response seemed to infuriate them even more. They saw it as an arrogant admission of guilt. Hakuin's reputation was instantly destroyed. The villagers who once revered him now turned on him, whispering insults as he passed, treating him with open scorn. He was no longer a master. He was a pariah. When the child was born, the parents, still filled with bitterness, wrapped the infant in blankets and brought it to the temple. "This is your child," they said, thrusting the baby at Hakuin. "You caused this problem, so you are responsible for it." Hakuin showed no sign of anger or distress. His calm did not waver. He simply reached out and took the baby into his arms with great care and tenderness. For the next year, Hakuin lovingly cared for the infant. This was not a brief inconvenience. It was a year of constant, public humiliation. He had to find a wet nurse in the village. He had to endure the accusatory glares and scornful gossip every single day as he begged for milk and supplies for the child. Yet, he treated the baby with boundless compassion and love, his inner peace utterly untouched by the storm of condemnation raging around him. He simply did what needed to be done. A full year passed. The young mother was tormented by her conscience. The weight of her lie and the sight of the profound injustice she had caused became an unbearable burden. Finally, she could stand it no longer and confessed the entire truth to her parents, revealing the real father. Her parents were struck with horror. The depth of their mistake, the terrible injustice they had inflicted upon an innocent and holy man, washed over them. Overcome with shame and remorse, they rushed to Hakuin's temple and threw themselves at his feet, bowing over and over again, tears streaming down their faces. "Master, we are so sorry," they wept. "We were wrong. Our daughter has confessed everything. You are innocent. Please, forgive us for our terrible mistake. And please, give us our grandchild back." Hakuin listened to their frantic apologies and confessions with the exact same calm, unruffled presence with which he had received their accusations a year earlier. There was no hint of, "I told you so," no trace of resentment, no demand for an apology. His mind was a clear, placid lake. He simply stood up, went and got the baby, who was healthy and happy, and gently handed the child back to its grandparents. All he said was, "Is that so?" This story is a breathtaking demonstration of true emotional and spiritual freedom. Hakuin's mind can be understood through the Mahayana metaphor of Adarsha Jnana, the wisdom of the great mirror. His consciousness was like a perfect, flawless mirror. When the accusations came, the mirror reflected them perfectly, without distortion. When the baby was placed before it, the mirror reflected the baby. When the apologies came, the mirror reflected them too. But at no point did the mirror become stained by the reflection. It never identified with what it was reflecting. Hakuin's sense of self, his core being, was not derived from his reputation as a great master, so it could not be harmed when that reputation was replaced with that of a disgraced monk. He was anchored in a reality far deeper than the shifting labels of the world. His simple phrase, "Is that so?" is a powerful tool of mindfulness, a master key for unlocking the prison of reactivity. It is not a phrase of sarcasm or indifference. It is a mental circuit breaker. When a stimulus arrives from the outside world praise or blame your automatic, conditioned response is to react instantly, to defend the ego. Hakuin's phrase inserts a sacred pause between the stimulus and the response. In that pause, freedom is born. It transforms a potential personal attack into an impersonal event to be observed. It asks a profound question. Is this statement an absolute truth about the core of my being, or is it simply a collection of sounds and thoughts arising from the mind of another person, shaped by their own conditioning, their own pain, their own story? You can practice this in your own life. When your boss praises your work and you feel yourself soaring on an ego high, you can gently ask internally, is that so? Enjoy the positive feedback, be grateful for it, but don't let it become the foundation of your self-worth, because that foundation will crumble with the first criticism. When a colleague or family member says something that stings, and you feel the familiar heat of defensiveness rise, you can pause, take a breath. Is that so? You don't have to absorb the comment as an ultimate truth about yourself. You can observe it, learn from it, if there is a lesson to be learned, and let it go if it is merely the projection of another's negativity. This is the practice of emotional sovereignty. You reclaim the authority to determine your own inner state. You stop being a puppet and you become the puppeteer. This does not mean you become cold or aloof. Hakuin was the opposite. He was so free from ego defense that he could respond to the situation, the baby's needs, with pure, unobstructed compassion. His heart was open because it wasn't armored against attack. He knew that his true nature was untouchable. The peace that the world gives, the world can take away. The fleeting high of praise is always balanced by the inevitable low of criticism, but the peace that arises from a mind that knows its own nature, a mind that is anchored in the quiet depths beneath the turbulent waves of praise and blame, that peace is unshakable. It is a peace the world cannot give, and therefore it is a peace the world can never take away. 7. A cup of tea and the fullness of the present moment. Let us now explore a condition so common in our modern lives that we barely even notice it anymore. It is the condition of being perpetually absent. Our bodies are in one place, but our minds are somewhere else entirely. Think of your day so far. As you ate your breakfast, were you truly tasting the food, or were you already composing the first email of the day in your head? During your commute, were you aware of the journey, the changing light, the world passing by your window? Or did you arrive at your destination with no memory of how you got there, having been lost in a fog of anxieties and to-do lists? We sit across from our loved ones, nodding and making the appropriate sounds of listening, but behind our eyes, we are planning, worrying, and strategizing. We live in a state of perpetual mental distraction. We treat the present moment not as our life, but as a perpetual waiting room. It is a hurdle to be cleared, a stepping stone on the way to some more important, more real moment in the future. We endure the now in order to get to the then. The profound tragedy of this way of living is that we are missing the only life we ever actually have. The past is a ghost, a collection of memory traces in the brain. The future is a fantasy, a mental projection that never arrives. The only point of contact with reality, the only time we are ever truly alive, is this very moment. And we are sleeping through it. We live a second-hand existence, narrated by the frantic, chattering voice in our heads, rather than a first-hand life, experienced directly through our senses. This quiet, constant absence is a source of a deep, often unacknowledged sorrow. This human tendency to live in the cluttered attic of our own minds, rather than in the open space of the present, is the subject of one of the most famous Zen stories. A prominent university professor, a man renowned for his vast knowledge of philosophy and religion, decided he wanted to learn about Zen. He had read every book he could find on the subject, but he felt he was still missing its essence. So, he made a long journey to visit an old Zen master who lived a simple life in a remote mountain temple. When the professor arrived, he was full of his own importance and intellectual prowess. He immediately began to speak, showcasing his extensive learning. He spoke of the history of Buddhism, of complex doctrines, of the various schools of thought, of his own interpretations and theories. He was not there to learn, but to have his existing knowledge validated and perhaps add a few exotic Zen concepts to his already vast collection. The old master listened patiently, his face serene and unreadable. After some time, he said, "Let us have some tea." He began the slow, deliberate ritual of preparing it. He heated the water, whisked the green powder in a ceramic bowl, and then, with perfect grace, he picked up the professor's cup. He began to pour the dark, steaming liquid. He filled the cup right to the brim, but he did not stop. The tea continued to pour, spilling over the rim, cascading down the side of the cup, and forming a hot, spreading puddle on the beautiful tatami mat. The professor watched this with growing alarm. At first, he was just confused, but then his impatience took over. Finally, he couldn't stand it any longer. "Stop!" he yelled, startling himself with his own abruptness. "What are you doing? The cup is over full. No more will go in. Can't you see?" The master calmly stopped pouring, placed the teapot down, and looked into the professor's eyes. "Like this cup," he said, his voice soft but clear as a bell. "You are full of your own opinions, speculations, and preconceived notions. You come to me with a cup that is already overflowing. How can I possibly show you Zen unless you first empty your cup?" The professor was stunned into silence. In that moment, he understood that all his intellectual knowledge, all his books and theories, were not a bridge to understanding, but a barrier. He had not come to receive, but only to confirm what he already thought he knew. This story is a direct diagnosis of our modern mind. We are all the professor, walking around with overflowing cups. Our cups are full of worries about the future, regrets about the past, rigid opinions, endless judgments about ourselves and others, and a constant, running commentary on everything we experience. Because our minds are so full, so cluttered, there is no room for life itself to enter. We experience our own mental narrative about the world, not the world itself. We taste our idea of coffee, not the rich, bitter reality of the coffee in the cup. We see our mental image of our partner, not the living, breathing, changing person sitting before us. The master's invitation to empty your cup is the fundamental invitation of all mindfulness practice. It is the call to cultivate what Zen calls Shoshin, or beginner's mind. A beginner's mind is a mind that is open, spacious, curious, and free from the arrogance of expertise. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. The professor had an expert's mind, closed and certain. To learn anything new, to truly experience anything fresh, we must be willing to become a beginner again. We must be willing to not know. This emptying of the cup allows us to experience the world in its tathata, or suchness. This is the Mahayana concept of seeing reality as it is, in its pure, unadorned, and vibrant state, before we slap a label on it. The warmth of the teacup in your hands is suchness. The intricate pattern of veins on a leaf is suchness. The sound of rain falling outside your window is suchness. Zen is not an abstract philosophy to be debated. It is the direct, intimate experience of the suchness of this very moment. The professor was seeking a grand idea, while the master was showing him that what he sought was already present in the simple act of pouring tea, an act the professor was too full to appreciate. So, how do we practice emptying our own cups? It is not some mystical, unattainable goal. It is a simple, practical, moment-to-moment discipline. It is a practice of gentle return. Let's try it right now, with a cup of tea meditation. If you don't have tea, use a glass of water, or simply the sensation of your own breath. First, choose to perform this one simple act and nothing else. This is an act of single tasking. For the next 2 minutes, this is your entire world. Hold the cup, feel its weight, its texture, its temperature. Notice how your hands have to curve to hold it. Empty your cup of the need to do anything else right now. Look at the liquid. See its color, its clarity, the way the light reflects on its surface. See the steam rising in intricate, dancing patterns. See it as if you have never seen such a thing before. Empty your cup of the label tea and just see the reality of it. Bring the cup towards you and notice the aroma. Don't just name it, smells like tea, but actually explore the scent. Is it earthy? Floral? What memories does it evoke? Empty your cup of expectations and simply receive the scent. Finally, take a small sip. Let the liquid rest on your tongue. Notice the taste, the bitterness, the sweetness, the complexity. Notice the temperature. Feel the sensation of swallowing as it travels down into your body. Now, inevitably, during this process, your mind will have wandered. A thought, "This is silly," or "I have to remember to call my mother," will have popped up. This is the moment of practice. The thought is the tea overflowing. Your job is not to get angry at the thought, but to do as the master did. Simply notice it, and then gently stop pouring. You gently acknowledge the thought, let it go, and return your attention to the next sip, the next scent, the next sensation. This act of noticing the distraction and gently returning is the entire practice of emptying your cup. Each time you do it, you strengthen your muscle of attention. Each time you do it, you reclaim your life from the tyranny of compulsive thinking. You can apply this to any activity. When you walk, just walk. Feel your feet on the ground. When you wash the dishes, just wash the dishes. Feel the warm water on your hands. When you listen to music, just listen. Allow yourself to be fully present for your life. The profound peace and beauty you are seeking is not in some future accomplishment or some complex philosophy. It is right here. It has been here all along, waiting patiently for you to arrive, with an empty cup in your hands, ready, finally, to receive it. 8. Indra's net and the end of loneliness. We now arrive at a fundamental source of suffering in our modern world, an ache so pervasive it has become the background noise of many of our lives. It is the pain of separation. We have been raised on a powerful myth, the myth of the separate self. We experience ourselves as isolated individuals, as skin, encapsulated egos. In the words of philosopher Alan Watts, we feel that I am in here, and the rest of the vast, intimidating world is out there. This feeling of being a solitary, disconnected unit creates a profound sense of loneliness. It also creates a world of competition and fear. If you are fundamentally separate from me, then your success could be a threat to my own. Your well-being is your problem, and my well-being is mine. We must compete for scarce resources, for love, for status, for happiness. This illusion of separation is the root of so much conflict. It is what allows us to treat others with indifference, because their suffering feels distant, unconnected to our own. It is what allows us to exploit the natural world, seeing it not as a part of our own extended body, but as a dead collection of resources for our use. This deep, painful fissure between self and other, between humanity and nature, is the source of our most profound anxieties. We feel unmoored, adrift in a cosmos that feels cold and meaningless. But what if this entire perception is a profound misunderstanding of the nature of reality? What if we are not separate at all? The Mahayana tradition offers a breathtakingly beautiful metaphor to heal this wound, a vision of reality known as Indra's net. Imagine, if you will, a vast cosmic net. It stretches out infinitely in all directions, beyond the furthest galaxies, into the endless expanse of space-time. It is woven not from rope, but from threads of pure light, a shimmering, multi-dimensional web. Now, at every single inter where the threads of this net cross, there is a single, perfect, multifaceted jewel. Each jewel is crystal clear and flawlessly polished, more brilliant than any diamond. There are an infinite number of these jewels. Now, here is the heart of the vision. If you were to look closely into the polished surface of any one of these jewels, you would discover that its surface reflects every other jewel in the entire infinite net, every single one. But the vision goes deeper. Within each of those tiny reflections glinting on the surface of that first jewel, the entire net is reflected yet again. Each tiny reflected jewel also reflects all the other jewels, and so on, for eternity. Ad infinitum. This is Indra's net. It is one of the most powerful and elegant expressions of the universe ever conceived. Let's unpack what it means for us, here, now. Each jewel represents a single entity in the cosmos. It could be you, it could be me. It could be a stranger you pass on the street, a tree in a forest, a grain of sand, a distant star, a single thought. The first teaching of the net is that each jewel is unique and brilliant in its own right, yet it is utterly and intimately connected to all the others through the threads of the web. Nothing exists in isolation. The second teaching is that of interpenetration. This is the most profound part. It is not just that we are all connected, it is that we all contain one another. When you look at one jewel, you see the whole net. This means that in you, right now, the entire universe is present. The whole is in the part, and the part is in the whole. The poet William Blake touched this truth when he wrote of the ability to see a world in a grain of sand and a heaven in a wild flower. You are not just a drop in the ocean, you are the entire ocean in a single drop. This vision of reality completely shatters the illusion of the separate self. The feeling of being an isolated individual is a trick of perception. We are not separate jewels sitting next to the net. We are the jewels, inseparable from the web that holds us, and from the light of all the other jewels that shine within us. This is a poetic description of the core Buddhist doctrine of pratityasamutpada, or dependent origination. This principle states that everything arises in dependence upon other factors. Nothing exists independently. Think of a simple flower. A flower cannot exist by itself. It needs the soil, the rain, the sunlight, the air, and the seed. The soil needs the minerals from ancient rocks and decayed organic matter. The rain needs the oceans and the clouds. The sun is a star born from cosmic dust billions of years ago. The seed contains the entire genetic history of its ancestors. If you truly look at the flower, you see the entire cosmos converging in that one beautiful expression. The great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh coined the perfect word for this: interbeing. The flower inter is with the sunshine. The sunshine inter is with the flower. You inter are with me, and we both inter are with the air we are breathing and the earth that supports us. Once this understanding moves from an intellectual concept to a felt reality, it changes everything. Specifically, It becomes the unshakable foundation for compassion. If we are all interconnected in this intimate way, then compassion, karuna, is not some noble, sentimental feeling we should try to cultivate. It becomes the most logical, rational, and natural response to the world. The boundary between self and other becomes porous and ultimately illusory. Your suffering is not just your problem. It is a painful vibration that ripples through the net and affects my own jewel. Your joy is not separate from my joy. It is a flash of light that brightens my own reflection. To harm another being, from this perspective, is a profound act of self-harm. To pollute a river is to poison our own veins. To act with cruelty towards another is to tarnish the reflection of our own jewel. Conversely, every act of kindness, no matter how small, is an act of cosmic self-care. When you are kind to another, you are polishing their jewel, and in doing so, the reflection of your own jewel becomes brighter and clearer. This is the logic behind the Bodhisattva's vow to work for the liberation of all beings. It is not an act of self-sacrifice. It is the joyous recognition that my own liberation is inextricably bound up with yours. We are in this together, in the most profound way imaginable. So, how do we move from understanding this beautiful idea to actually living it? We can practice seeing the net in our daily lives. Try this simple meditation on interbeing with a piece of food, like an apple. Before you take a bite, hold it in your hand. Look at it. See the apple not as a solid, separate object, but as a jewel in Indra's net. In this apple, can you see the sun that warmed it? Can you see the rain that nourished it? Can you see the earth that held its roots? Can you see the blossom that preceded it, and the bee that pollinated the blossom? Can you see the person who picked the apple, and the truck driver who brought it to the store? Can you see the parents of the farmer, and the entire chain of life that resulted in this one perfect fruit resting in your hand? When you look deeply, you see that this single apple contains the entire universe. It is with everything. When you eat it, you are eating sunshine, rain, and earth. You are taking the universe into yourself. You can also practice this with people. The next time you are interacting with someone, a cashier at the grocery store, a colleague, a family member, tree for just one moment to see them as another jewel. See past the temporary role they are playing and recognize the vast, intricate, and mysterious universe that is contained within them. Recognize that the web of causes and conditions that brought you both to this single point of is infinitely complex and miraculous. This simple shift in perception can dissolve irritation, judgment, and indifference, and replace it with a sense of awe, respect, and connection. The vision of Indra's net is the ultimate antidote to loneliness. It tells us that we are never, ever alone. We are woven into the very fabric of being, profoundly connected to every particle and every consciousness in existence. Our every thought, word, and action sends ripples through this cosmic web. This is both a great responsibility and a great comfort. It means that our small lives have an immense and cosmic significance. Every time you choose kindness over cruelty, understanding over judgment, generosity over greed, you are helping to heal and illuminate the entire universe. You are polishing your jewel, and in doing so, you brighten the light of us all. 9. Transforming poison into medicine. The story of Angulimala. We now venture into the shadowlands of the human heart. Within each of us, there are poisons. For some, it is the slow-burning poison of resentment that colors every interaction. For others, it is the sharp, fiery poison of anger that erupts without warning. It may be the cold, heavy poison of shame over past mistakes, the clinging poison of addiction, or the subtle, but corrosive poison of self-hatred that whispers words of inadequacy in our quietest moments. We often feel defined by these poisons. We may even come to believe that they are us. We think, I am an angry person, or I am just broken, as if these states were a fixed, permanent part of our identity. This belief that we are fundamentally and irrevocably flawed is one of the most painful prisons we can build for ourselves. We feel that we have gone too far, that we have made too many mistakes, that the stain of our past is indelible. We see our inner darkness as something to be hidden, suppressed, or fought against, a battle that we almost always seem to lose. The Mahayana path, however, offers a startlingly different perspective, one of radical alchemy. It teaches that these very poisons, the very source of our deepest suffering, need not be eradicated. Instead, when met with the fierce heat of wisdom and the boundless coolness of compassion, they can be transformed. They can become the very medicine that heals us. This incredible potential for transformation is illustrated most dramatically in the terrifying and beautiful story of the mass murderer Angulimala. During the time of the Buddha, in the kingdom of Kosala, there lived a man who had become a spectre of pure terror. His name was Angulimala, which means garland of fingers. He was a bandit and a serial killer of unimaginable cruelty who haunted the forests. He would ambush travelers, murder them, and then, as a gruesome trophy, he would cut off one of their fingers and add it to a necklace he wore. His reputation was so fearsome that entire villages were abandoned. The main road through the region, once a bustling trade route, now lay silent and empty. People would tremble at the mere mention of his name. He was not just a criminal, he was a monster, a demon in human form. His goal was to collect 1,000 fingers for his garland, and he was nearly there. He wore a necklace of 999 human fingers. He needed only one more. At this time, Angulimala's elderly mother, her heart breaking with a combination of love and horror for the monster her son had become, decided she would go into the forest to try and plead with him. Hearing of her intention, the Buddha, through his clear comprehension, saw the immense danger. He saw that Angulimala, his mind so clouded by bloodlust, would not recognize his own mother and, in his obsession to complete his garland, would kill her. This act of matricide would create such unimaginably heavy and negative karma that it would cast Angulimala into the lowest realms of suffering for an almost endless period of time. To prevent this ultimate tragedy, the Buddha deliberately and calmly set out, walking alone down the deserted forest path, directly towards Angulimala's territory. Angulimala, watching from his hiding place, was astonished. He thought, "This is amazing." Usually, entire caravans of armed men fear to walk this road, and yet here comes a lone, unarmed monk, walking as if on a pleasant stroll. He will be an easy final victim. With his sword drawn, he began to run after the Buddha. But a strange thing happened. Though the Buddha was only walking at a normal, unhurried pace, Angulimala, running with all his might, could not catch up to him. It was as if the earth itself was contracting for the Buddha and expanding for the killer. Exhausted, frustrated, and bewildered, Angulimala screamed out, his voice echoing through the terrified forest. "Stop, monk! Stop, right there!" The Buddha, without breaking his stride or turning his head, replied in a voice that was perfectly calm and resonant with power, "I have stopped, Angulimala. It is you who have not stopped." This reply completely baffled the killer. He skidded to a halt. "What sort of trick is this, monk?" he yelled. "You are clearly still walking, and I am standing still. How can you say that you have stopped, and I have not?" The Buddha then stopped walking and turned to face the most feared man in the kingdom. He looked at Angulimala, not with fear or condemnation, but with an ocean of unwavering compassion. He saw not the monster, but the deep, agonizing suffering that was driving the man's horrific actions. "Angulimala," he said, his voice gentle but firm, "I have stopped for all time. I have laid down all weapons. I have ceased from doing harm. And I have established myself in universal love for every living being. I have stopped creating the causes of suffering. You, on the other hand, are endlessly running. You are running on the wheel of violence, hatred, and guilt. You have not stopped harming others, and you have not stopped harming yourself. That is why I say, I have stopped, and you have not." These words struck Angulimala with the force of a thunderbolt. In his entire life, everyone had reacted to him with either terror or hatred. No one had ever dared to stand before him, and certainly, no one had ever looked at him with such profound and fearless compassion. In the presence of the Buddha's immense peace, Angulimala's lifetime of rage, delusion, and violence suddenly seemed like a flimsy, pathetic charade. The Buddha's words were a mirror that showed him the horrifying truth of his own condition. He saw the endless, pointless suffering he was creating for himself and others. The foundation of his monstrous identity shattered in an instant. He threw down his sword, fell to his knees before the Buddha, and wept with unbearable remorse. The garland of fingers had been broken. In that moment of profound surrender, he begged to become the Buddha's disciple. The Buddha accepted him, and the fearsome murderer was ordained as a monk. This is the first miracle of the story, the immediate and total cessation of his evil path. But the transformation was not yet complete. The story teaches us that transformation does not erase the consequences of our past actions. When the now monk Angulimala would go into the city to beg for his food, he was recognized by the townspeople. They were still terrified and enraged. They could not see the transformed monk. They could only see the monster who had murdered their families. They would scream at him, throw rocks, garbage, and beat him with sticks. He would often return to the Buddha bruised, bleeding, his robes torn, but he never retaliated. He never grew angry. He endured it all with incredible patience and forbearance. The Buddha would encourage him, saying, "Bear it, Angulimala, bear it. You are experiencing in this very lifetime the karmic results that could have caused you to suffer in hell for eons." Through his dedicated meditation and his patient endurance of these consequences, Angulimala purified his mind completely. The immense energy he had once directed towards violence, he now directed towards liberation. And not long after, he became a fully enlightened arahant, a being who has completely extinguished the fires of greed, hatred, and ignorance. The poison had been fully transformed into medicine. This story is the ultimate message of hope. It teaches that no one is beyond redemption. If a man who had murdered 999 people could achieve enlightenment, then there is no mistake we have made, no poison we carry that is powerful enough to condemn us forever. The Mahayana view is that our true nature, our Buddha nature, is like a flawless diamond. Our negative actions and emotions are like mud caked onto the diamond. Our task is not to try and change the diamond, but simply to wash away the mud. Angulimala's mud was thick and hard, but the diamond of his potential for awakening was always there, waiting to be uncovered. The practice for us is to learn to approach our own inner Angulimala or rage, our shame, our addictions with the same attitude as the Buddha, not with fear and condemnation, but with fearless curiosity and compassion. When a difficult emotion arises, Instead of suppressing it or acting on it, can we stop and look at it? Can we ask with genuine kindness, what is the suffering here? What is this part of me trying to protect? When we meet our inner poisons with mindfulness and compassion, we stop feeding them with the energy of our resistance. We cut off their fuel. And in that space, the alchemical process can begin. We can learn to bear the consequences of our past actions with patience, while holding a firm resolve to cultivate a new path forward, a path of non-harming, of kindness, and of wisdom. Your deepest wound can become your greatest gift. The places where you feel most broken can, when met with this transformative compassion, become the source of your deepest wisdom and your greatest strength. Angulimala's story proves that the potential for enlightenment is more powerful than the potential for evil, and that the power of compassion is the ultimate force for healing in the universe. 10. The 1,000 Arms of Compassion. Healing the overwhelmed heart. We live in an age of unprecedented awareness. Through the glowing screens we hold in our hands, the suffering of the entire world is delivered to us, 24 hours a day. We see the faces of those affected by wars in distant lands. We hear the stories of communities devastated by famine or flood. We witness the slow, grinding pain of social injustice and ecological collapse. Our nervous systems, which evolved for the concerns of a small tribe, are now bombarded with the sorrows of 8 billion people. And our hearts, naturally inclined to feel for others, are faced with an ocean of pain so vast it threatens to drown us. This constant exposure presents us with a profound spiritual crisis. How do we respond? For many of us, the first response is a deep sense of helplessness and despair. The problems feel too big, our own capacity too small. Our efforts feel like trying to empty the ocean with a teaspoon. This can lead to a state of compassion fatigue, a bone-deep weariness where the heart simply feels too broken to keep caring. As a defense mechanism against this overwhelming pain, another response is to shut down. We build a wall around our hearts. We become cynical, telling ourselves that it has always been this way, or there's nothing anyone can do. We learn to scroll past the suffering, to change the channel, to privatize our peace by cultivating a strategic indifference. We do this to survive, but a part of us knows that in sealing off our hearts from the world's pain, we also seal them off from its joy and its profound connection. How do we keep our hearts open in the face of so much suffering without shattering into 1,000 pieces? The Mahayana tradition addresses this very question through the powerful and poetic story of the Bodhisattva of compassion, known as Avalokiteshvara or Guanyin in East Asia. This is not just a myth, it is a roadmap for the evolution of the human heart. The story begins with the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara making a sacred and powerful vow, looking out upon the universe, teeming with beings caught in the endless cycle of suffering, or samsara. Their heart was moved by an immense love. They vowed that they would work tirelessly for eons upon eons, and would not rest until every single sentient being, without exception, was liberated from suffering. And so, for ages, for kalpas, they worked. They manifested in countless forms, offering comfort, guidance, and protection, guiding millions of beings towards peace and awakening. After an immeasurable period of this tireless effort, Avalokiteshvara ascended to a celestial peak to look out upon their work, perhaps expecting to see a universe nearly emptied of suffering. But as they gazed out with their divine sight, their heart broke. While they had saved countless beings, countless more still languished in misery. The great ocean of suffering seemed just as vast and deep as when they had begun. In that moment, a profound despair washed over them. They thought, "This task is impossible. My efforts are meaningless. My vow can never be fulfilled." The weight of all the suffering in all the worlds became too much for their singular mind and heart to bear. And in that moment of ultimate compassion fatigue, their head exploded into 1,000 pieces. This shattering represents the breaking point of personal, sentimental compassion. It is the realization that my limited effort, my singular will, is not enough to heal the world. But the story does not end in despair. The great Buddha of boundless light, Amitabha, saw the Bodhisattva's plight. With his own immense compassion, he gathered the shattered fragments and reassembled them. But he did not restore the single head. Instead, he created 11 heads, some peaceful, some wrathful, some joyful, allowing the Bodhisattva to perceive the cries of suffering from all 10 directions of the universe simultaneously. The Bodhisattva's capacity to perceive the need was miraculously expanded, but a new problem arose. With this vastly expanded awareness, Avalokiteshvara realized that their 2 arms were woefully inadequate to respond to all the needs they could now perceive. Once again, Amitabha Buddha intervened, and in a great blossoming of light, he bestowed upon the Bodhisattva 1,000 arms, fanning out like the petals of a great cosmic lotus. And, most importantly, in the palm of each of the 1,000 hands, there was an eye. This is the central image, the key to the entire teaching. The 1,000 hands represent karuna compassion in action, skillful means, the ability to reach out and help in a multitude of ways. The 1,000 eyes represent prajna wisdom, the clear seeing of reality as it is, the ability to perceive the true needs of any situation. The eye in the palm is the perfect symbol for the indivisible union of wisdom and compassion. For compassion without wisdom is blind. It can be sentimental, interfering, and even harmful, a phenomenon sometimes called idiot compassion. It is the desire to help without understanding the full context or the deeper causes of suffering. And wisdom without compassion can be cold, sterile, and detached. It is the ability to see the truth without the heart motivation, to use that insight to help others. For a bodhisattva, for an awakened being, the two must work together as one. This story teaches us how to move from our limited personal compassion, which shatters under pressure, to what is called Mahakaruna, or the Great Compassion. Great compassion is not an emotion we feel. It is a fundamental force of the universe that we can learn to align ourselves with. It is not me helping you. It is the universe acting through us to bring healing and balance. It is boundless and does not burn out, because its source is not our own finite emotional energy. So, how do we, as ordinary people, cultivate these 1,000 arms and 1,000 eyes without being overwhelmed? The practice is both profound and practical. First, we must understand that you are not expected to save the entire world at once. The practice is to use your 2 hands to help the one being who is right in front of you. That might be a child who needs your full attention, a partner who needs a listening ear, a stranger who needs a simple kindness, or an animal that needs care. Your 1,000 arms are simply your 2 hands, used with full presence and kindness, over and over again. Each small, mindful act of help is one of the 1,000 arms in motion. Second, we practice wise compassion, the eye in the palm. This means respecting our own limits. It is not compassionate to burn yourself out to the point of sickness and despair. True compassion must include yourself. This means setting boundaries, saying no when you need to, and replenishing your own energy. The candle cannot give light if it consumes all its own wax in one great flash. Wise compassion also means letting go of the outcome. We offer our help, our presence, our love, but we cannot control how it is received or what the result will be. We do our part, and we release the rest to the great web of causes and conditions. Third, we can use our own minds to cultivate an open heart. When we are confronted with suffering we cannot physically change, we can practice a simple form of Tonglen, or sending and taking. As you breathe in, you can mindfully acknowledge the suffering you see in the world, breathing it in not as a poison to harm you, but as a deep recognition of our shared reality. This is suffering. I see it. I acknowledge it. As you breathe out, you can send out a wish for peace, for healing, for relief. May you be free from this suffering. May you find peace. This simple practice transforms us from helpless spectators into active participants in the circulation of compassion. It keeps the heart from closing down. Finally, you must discover your own unique hands. Your compassionate action does not have to look like working in a soup kitchen or a refugee camp, though it certainly can. What are your unique gifts? Are you a good listener, a talented organizer, a gifted artist, a skilled cook, a patient teacher, a person who can create order out of chaos, a person who can make others laugh? Your 1,000 arms are your unique talents and skills, offered for the benefit of others. Using what you are naturally good at to bring a little more ease, beauty, or joy into the world is the practice of 1,000-armed compassion. The story of Avalokiteshvara is the story of our own potential. Our hearts are not meant to be sealed vaults, protecting us from pain. They are meant to break, but they are meant to break open, not break down. They are designed to break open into a compassion that is vaster, wiser, and more powerful than our small personal emotions. When we feel overwhelmed by the world's pain, it is not a sign that we should close our hearts. It is an invitation to allow our hearts to shatter their own limitations and blossom into the 1,000-armed, 1,000-eyed compassion that is our true birthright. 11. The trap of comparison. Walking your own muddy road. We now turn our attention to a poison so subtle, so deeply ingrained in the fabric of our culture, that we often fail to recognize it as the source of our own suffering. It is the poison of comparison. From our earliest days, we are taught to measure ourselves against others. We compare grades in school, athletic abilities on the field, and later, salaries, job titles, houses, and the perceived happiness of our relationships. In the modern era, this tendency has been weaponized by the curated highlight reels of social media, where we are invited 24 hours a day to compare our own messy, behind-the-scenes reality with the perfectly filtered, publicly presented successes of others. This endless act of measuring is a game with no winners. If we judge ourselves to be ahead of someone else, we experience a fleeting and fragile sense of pride, a precarious superiority that depends on others remaining behind us. If we judge ourselves to be behind, we are plunged into the toxic swamp of envy, inadequacy, and self-criticism. Both outcomes are forms of bondage. Both chain our sense of well-being to an external, ever-shifting benchmark. This habit of comparison is the ultimate thief of joy. It robs us of the ability to appreciate the unique beauty and texture of our own lives, because our eyes are always fixed on someone else's path. We become so obsessed with the journey of others that we forget to walk our own. Even on the spiritual path, this poison can manifest in subtle ways. We might compare our meditation practice to someone else's. Why can't I be as calm as they are? We might create hierarchies of spiritual attainment, judging others for not being as aware or compassionate as we believe ourselves to be. This is the ego's most cunning trick, to take the very tools of liberation and turn them into instruments of self-aggrandizement, a phenomenon known as spiritual materialism. The classic Zen story, often called the Muddy Road, serves as a profound illustration of this very trap. We have met these two monks before, but let us look at their journey through a new lens, not through the lens of carrying the past, but through the lens of the present moment venom of comparison. As you recall, two monks, one senior and one junior, were traveling together. The senior monk walked with an easy, present grace. His mind was where his feet were. The junior monk, however, was walking a different journey. He was walking his path while simultaneously trying to audit his master's calm. His mind was a flurry of calculations and comparisons. He was deeply invested in being a good monk, and his definition of good was based entirely on a rigid adherence to the monastic rules he had memorized. When they arrived at the muddy, swollen river and saw the young woman in distress, the junior monk's mind immediately went to the rulebook. He thought, "We are forbidden to touch a woman. I will follow this rule perfectly." In that moment, he felt a flicker of pride. He was doing it right. When the senior monk, without a moment's hesitation, lifted the woman and carried her across the river, the junior monk's mind began its toxic work of comparison. He didn't just see an act of compassion, he saw a transgression. And in that transgression, he saw an opportunity to solidify his own spiritual superiority. As they walked on for the next several hours, the junior monk was not suffering because he was carrying the woman in memory. He was suffering because he was actively carrying the comparison. He was building a case in his mind, arranging the evidence. On one side of his mental ledger, he listed his own virtues. I am disciplined. I am pure. I follow the precepts. On the other side, he listed his master's perceived flaws. He is careless. He is worldly. He is impure. The beautiful landscape around him disappeared. The companionship of his master vanished. His entire reality was consumed by this internal drama of measurement. He had become a prisoner of his own spiritual pride, a pride born entirely from the act of comparing. When he finally burst out in accusation, "How could you do such a thing? We are forbidden to touch women." The "we" was telling. He was holding his master to his own rigid standard. The senior monk's reply, as we know, was, "Brother, I put that woman down by the river hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" Through this new lens of comparison, we can hear a deeper question. The her is not just the woman. She is the judgment. She is the comparison. She is the entire mental ledger of who is better and who is worse. The master is saying, I engaged with reality, responded with compassion, and let the situation go. I did not create a story of comparison or judgment around it. Why are you still carrying that heavy, useless burden? Why are you still carrying your need to be better than me? The ego loves to compare. It is the primary way it reinforces its own existence. The ego is a relational construct. It only knows who it is by defining what it is not. I am smart only has meaning in comparison to someone perceived as less smart. I am successful only has meaning in comparison to someone deemed a failure. This is why comparison is so fundamentally at odds with the spiritual path, whose entire aim is to see through the illusion of this separate, constructed self. Every time we compare, we are thickening the walls of the very prison we are trying to escape. Connecting back to the vision of Indra's net, we remember that every jewel shines with its own unique light. A ruby does not despair because it is not a sapphire. It does not feel pride because it is not a pebble. It simply radiates its own intrinsic rubiness. Our spiritual work is not to become the most brilliant jewel in the net, but to discover and polish our own unique facet, to radiate our own authentic nature without apology or arrogance. Your path is your path. It will not and should not look like anyone else's. So, how do we break this deeply ingrained habit? How do we learn to walk our own muddy road? The first practice is to learn, as they say in yoga, to keep your eyes on your own mat. When you are in a yoga class, if you are constantly looking around to see if the person next to you is more flexible or can hold a pose longer, you will lose your balance, risk injury, and miss the entire internal experience of the practice. Your breath, your alignment, your inner state, that is your yoga. It is the same in life. When you feel your mental gaze drifting to someone else's mat, their career, their relationship, their perceived happiness, the practice is to gently, and without scolding yourself, guide your attention back to your own breath, your own feet on the ground, your own life, right here, right now. Second, we can bring mindfulness to our use of the tools that fuel comparison, like social media. Before you open an app, you can set an intention. I will use this to connect, not to compare. As you scroll, notice the feeling of comparison when it arises. Feel it in your body, that little pang of envy, that subtle sinking feeling. Acknowledge it. There is comparison. Simply seeing it weakens its power, and then you can practice mudita, or sympathetic joy. When you see someone celebrating a success, actively try to feel happy for them. Their success does not diminish your own worth. There is not a limited supply of happiness in the universe. In the logic of Indra's net, another jewel shining brightly only adds to the beauty of the whole web. Finally, the most powerful antidote to the poison of comparison is the medicine of gratitude. Specifically, gratitude for your own unique, incomparable life. Take a moment each day to notice what is good in your world, not in comparison to anyone else, but just as it is. Your health, a roof over your head, a friend's laughter, the taste of your morning coffee, your own particular talents, your own strange and wonderful history. Comparison thrives in the soil of not enough. Gratitude cultivates the rich, fertile ground of I am enough. This life is enough. The junior monk was miserable because he was trying to walk two paths at once, his own and his master's. The senior monk was free because he was only walking one. You have only one path to walk. It is yours. It will be muddy at times. It will be challenging, but it is the only one that can lead to your own authentic liberation. Let go of the impossible, exhausting burden of comparison. Drop the mental ledger. Bring your eyes back to your own mat, your own road, and walk on. 12. Vimalakirti's silence and the wisdom of not knowing. We live in what we proudly call the information age. At our fingertips, we have access to a repository of human knowledge vaster than all the libraries of history combined. From this, a new kind of pressure has emerged. The tyranny of knowing. We feel an immense pressure to be informed, to have a well-articulated opinion on everything from global politics to the latest wellness trend. The phrase, "I don't know," has become synonymous with weakness or ignorance. We believe that certainty is strength, that having the right answer is the key to success and security. We see our minds as computers to be filled with data, and we believe that if we can just process enough information, we can solve the puzzle of life. This relentless pursuit of knowledge extends deep into our spiritual lives. We read countless books, listen to endless podcasts, and attend numerous workshops. We collect spiritual concepts like rare jewels, non-duality, emptiness, mindfulness, enlightenment. We can become incredibly skilled at talking about the path. We can debate the finer points of philosophy for hours. But in this process, a great danger arises. We can mistake the menu for the meal. We can mistake the map for the territory. We can become so full of beautiful words and elegant concepts that, like the professor with his overflowing teacup, we leave no room for direct, unmediated experience. We believe wisdom is something we acquire, something we add to our minds. But what if true wisdom is not about adding, but about subtracting? What if it is found not in the clever answer, but in the courageous embrace of not knowing? This profound truth is the central theme of one of the most brilliant and radical texts in all of Mahayana Buddhism, the Vimalakirti Sutra. Its central hero is not a monk who has renounced the world, but Vimalakirti, a wealthy, powerful, and deeply engaged layman, a householder who is also a fully enlightened bodhisattva. He lives in the midst of worldly life, proving that enlightenment is not an escape from the world, but a transformation of our relationship to it. The sutra opens with Vimalakirti using a skillful means. He pretends to be sick. The Buddha, knowing this is a teaching opportunity, asks his greatest disciples, the paragons of monastic virtue and wisdom, to go and pay him a visit. One by one, they all refuse, each with an embarrassing story of how Vimalakirti had previously humbled them. He had exposed the subtle pride of one, the lingering attachment of another, the incomplete understanding of a third. He was a master of cutting through spiritual pretense. Finally, Manjushri, the bodhisattva of wisdom itself, agrees to go, and a vast assembly of beings from across the universe gathers at Vimalakirti's home to witness the epic dialogue that is sure to unfold. They arrive to find Vimalakirti in a room that is miraculously, impossibly emptier physical teaching on the nature of emptiness, shunyata. The climax of their dialogue arrives when a group of advanced bodhisattvas are asked to explain the ultimate nature of reality, the entry into the Dharma, gate of non-duality. One by one, they stand and give eloquent, philosophically brilliant answers. One says, to see birth and death as not two is non-duality. Another says, to understand that ignorance and enlightenment are of the same nature is non-duality. Another explains that samsara and nirvana are not separate. Each answer is beautiful, profound, and correct on a conceptual level. They represent the absolute pinnacle of what the human intellect can articulate about ultimate truth. Finally, it is Manjushri's turn. As the embodiment of wisdom, he gives the final, ultimate, conceptual answer. He says that to be silent about all words and letters, to have nothing to say, nothing to express, nothing to proclaim, that is the true entry into non-duality. It is a brilliant answer that uses the concept of silence to negate all concepts. He has reached the very edge of language. Then, Manjushri turns to the layman Vimalakirti, who has been lying on his sickbed, listening to this entire exchange. Good sir, Manjushri asks, it is now your turn. How does a bodhisattva enter the gate of non-duality? And Vimalakirti responds with a deep, profound, and thunderous silence. He says nothing. He offers no concept, no gesture, no hint. In the face of this absolute silence, this utter lack of an answer, Manjushri is overcome with awe. He praises Vimalakirti, saying, "Excellent, excellent. This is indeed the true entry into non-duality. It is beyond anything that can be spoken or shown. This is the ultimate expression." Vimalakirti's silence was not a passive absence of sound. It was an active, powerful event. It was a thunderclap that shattered every beautiful concept the others had so carefully constructed. The other bodhisattvas gave brilliant descriptions of the moon. Vimalakirti's silence was the moon itself. It demonstrated that the ultimate truth of reality, being non-dual, cannot be captured by language, which is an inherently dualistic tool. The moment you say enlightenment, you create the concept of delusion. The moment you say good, you create bad. Any statement about non-duality is, by its very nature, a step away from it. Vimalakirti's silence was a direct pointing, a transmission of truth that bypassed the intellect entirely and spoke directly to the heart of awareness. This is a radical teaching for our age of information overload. We are all trying to figure it out. We are trying to think our way to peace. We are trying to understand our way to enlightenment. Vimalakirti teaches us that true wisdom is not found in having the right answer, but in letting go of the need for an answer altogether. It is the wisdom of what the Zen tradition calls the don't know mind. Don't know mind is not the same as ignorance. Ignorance is a closed state, a refusal to see. Don't know mind is a state of radical openness. It is the courage to drop our lifetime of accumulated knowledge, our precious opinions, and our rigid certainties, and to meet this present moment with fresh, naked awareness. It is the ultimate expression of the beginner's mind. When your mind is in a state of don't know, it is spacious, curious, and receptive. It is ready to experience reality directly, rather than just thinking about it. So how do we practice this in a world that demands we know? First, we can practice embracing the power of the phrase, "I don't know." When you are in a conversation and feel pressured to have a definitive opinion on a complex issue you haven't fully explored, try, as an experiment, to say with honesty and humility, "You know, I'm not sure. I haven't formed a strong opinion on that. I'm still listening." Notice what this feels like. It is not an admission of weakness. It is a position of incredible strength, honesty, and intellectual integrity. It opens the door for real dialogue, rather than a clash of rigid certainties. Second, we can practice through silent meditation, or zazen. The practice of sitting in silence is the practice of embodying Vimalakirti's silence. The instruction is not to empty the mind of thoughts that's impossible. The instruction is to simply sit, to be aware, and to let thoughts come and go without holding on to them. The thoughts are the eloquent bodhisattvas, each with something clever and important to say. The practice is to let them say their piece, and then to let them dissolve back into the vast, silent awareness from which they arose. You are not the thoughts. You are the silent space in which the thoughts appear. Third, you can drop the storyline. Think of a problem in your life right now that you are trying desperately to figure out. Notice the frantic mental chatter, the endless loop of what-ifs and shoulds. For just 1 minute, give yourself permission to stop trying to solve it. Consciously, drop the storyline, let go of the commentary, and just be with the raw, physical sensation of the problem in your body. The tightness in your chest, the heat in your face. No story, no analysis, just pure, direct experience. This is a taste of Vimalakirti's silence. It is in this silent space, free from the mind's frantic churn, that true insight often arises spontaneously. Finally, we can practice silent listening. When you are with another person, resist the urge to formulate your reply while they are speaking. Resist the urge to interrupt with your own story or your own brilliant solution. Just listen. Offer them the gift of your silent, spacious attention. In doing so, you are not only giving them a profound gift, but you are also practicing the art of emptying your own mind. The peace we seek is not hidden in another book or another podcast. It is not waiting in a future moment when we finally have it all figured out. It is available right now, in this moment, underneath the noise of our thinking. It is in the thunderous silence of our own being. Vimalakirti's great teaching is an invitation to come home to this silence, to let go of the exhausting burden of knowing, and to finally rest in the wise, spacious, and liberated heart of don't know. 13. The King's Ring and the Wisdom of Impermanence. Let us now examine the very engine that drives so much of our anxiety and dissatisfaction. It is the relentless, exhausting project of trying to secure permanent happiness in a world that is fundamentally impermanent. We live our lives on an emotional roller coaster. We are propelled into the sky by moments of success, praise, and pleasure. We get the promotion, we fall in love, we receive a compliment, and for a fleeting moment, we feel whole, invincible. Our primary project then becomes trying to stay at that peak, to cling to that feeling, to make the ephemeral moment last forever. But inevitably, the roller coaster crests, the pleasant feeling fades, the circumstances change, and we are plunged into the darkness of loss, failure, and pain. Our project then shifts to desperately trying to escape the valley of sorrow, to claw our way back to the next peak. This endless cycle of grasping for pleasure and recoiling from pain is the very definition of suffering, or dukkha, in the Buddhist tradition. We become slaves to circumstance. Our inner peace is not our own. It is a hostage to the ever-changing conditions of the external world. We believe that if we can just arrange our lives perfectly, if we can build high enough walls to keep out all pain and accumulate enough treasures to guarantee permanent pleasure, we will finally be happy. But this is like trying to build a castle of solid rock on the surface of a flowing river. It is a project doomed to failure, and the struggle itself is what exhausts us. There is an ancient story, found in various forms across many wisdom traditions, that speaks directly to this human predicament. It is the story of a great and powerful king. This king had everything a person could desire. He had immense wealth, sprawling territories, a loving family, and the respect of his people. He was victorious in battle and wise in governance. Yet, for all his external success, he was a prisoner of his own heart. In moments of triumph, he would be swept away by an intoxicating wave of pride and elation, only to feel a deep anxiety that it would not last. In moments of defeat or loss of failed harvest, a personal sorrow would be plunged into a pit of despair, so deep he felt he would never emerge. His mood swung violently with the pendulum of fortune, and he was wise enough to know that this was no way to live. One day, he summoned his most trusted and wisest advisor. "You have served me well for many years," the king said. "I have one more task for you, perhaps the most difficult of all. I want you to find me something, an object, a phrase, a secret that will bring balance to my soul. I want something that will make me thoughtful when I am happy and give me hope when I am sad. Go now, and do not return until you have found such a thing." The advisor bowed and left. He traveled for many months, consulting with sages, mystics, and philosophers. He gathered complex theories and profound-sounding doctrines, but he knew none of them would satisfy the king's simple, direct request. Finally, he sought out an old, reclusive master, known for his quiet unconventional wisdom. The advisor explained the king's dilemma. The old master listened patiently and then simply handed the advisor a small, simple gold ring. "Have your finest jeweler engrave a short phrase upon this ring," the master said. "Tell the king to look at it and read the words in his moments of greatest triumph and his moments of deepest despair." He then whispered the short phrase to the advisor. The advisor returned to the palace and presented the plain ring to the king. The king was unimpressed. "This is it?" he asked. "A simple ring?" "Your Majesty," the advisor replied, "the wisdom is not in the ring, but in the words engraved upon it. Please, read them." The king looked closely at the ring. There, in small, elegant letters, were 3 simple words: "This too shall pass." Sometime later, the king's army won a decisive and glorious victory. As he rode at the head of a triumphant parade through the cheering crowds of his capital, he felt his heart swell with an almost unbearable pride. He felt like a god, invincible and immortal. At the absolute peak of this feeling, his fingers found the ring on his hand. He glanced down and read the words, "This too shall pass." In that instant, a profound shift occurred within him. The pride did not vanish, but it was tempered with humility. The elation was still there, but it was now imbued with a sense of preciousness. He realized this glorious moment was a fleeting cloud in the vast sky of time. This realization, far from diminishing his joy, actually deepened it. It allowed him to savor the victory fully, without clinging to it or making it the foundation of his identity. Years later, a great tragedy befell the kingdom. A terrible plague swept through the land, and the king lost his beloved wife. The grief was a physical weight that crushed him. He locked himself in his chambers, refusing to see anyone, convinced that the sun would never shine again, that this agony would be his reality forever. His world had shrunk to the size of his sorrow. In the depths of his despair, his hand absent-mindedly touched the ring. Through his tear-blurred eyes, he managed to make out the words, "This too shall pass." The words did not magically erase his pain. His heart was still broken, but they were like a key unlocking a window in his dark prison of grief. They broke the illusion of permanence that suffering creates. The thought, "This pain will last forever," was revealed to be a lie. This agony, as immense and all-consuming as it was also a condition, a state, a passing storm. And in that realization, a tiny sliver of hope entered his heart. The pain was still there, but now there was space around it. He knew that one day he would feel the sun again. This simple story is a masterclass in one of the core teachings of the Buddha, the truth of anicca, or impermanence. Impermanence is not a depressing or nihilistic philosophy. It is a simple, observable fact. Everything that has a beginning has an end. Every thought that arises in the mind fades away. Every emotion, no matter how intense, eventually subsides. Our bodies, our relationships, our societies, the very mountains and starsoul, are in a constant state of flux. Nothing is static. Nothing is permanent. Our suffering does not arise from the fact of impermanence itself. It arises from our resistance to it. We try to grasp the pleasant and push away the unpleasant, a futile struggle against the fundamental flow of reality. The wisdom of the ring is the practice of upekkha, or equanimity. Equanimity is not indifference, detachment, or apathy. Indifference says, "I don't care." Apathy is a numb refusal to feel. Equanimity is a deep, spacious, and balanced heart that cares deeply, but whose peace is not contingent on a specific outcome. It is the ability to feel joy completely, without the anxious grasping that sours it. It is the ability to feel sorrow completely, without being drowned in the story that it will last forever. It is the steady, unshakable balance of a mind that has found its center. The phrase, "this too shall pass," can become a powerful mindfulness practice in our own lives. It is a mantra of liberation. When you are experiencing a moment of great joy and success, gently bring the phrase to mind, "This too shall pass." This is not to be a killjoy. It is an invitation to savor the moment more completely. When you know something is precious and fleeting, you pay closer attention. You don't take it for granted. It also protects you from the arrogance of pride and the inevitable crash that comes when the good times fade. When you are experiencing a moment of great difficulty, physical pain, emotional heartbreak, anxiety, fear, you can compassionately whisper to yourself, "This too shall pass." This is not a spiritual bypass or a denial of your pain. It is a lifeline of truth. It is a reminder that you are not your feeling. You are the awareness in which the feeling is occurring. The feeling is a temporary weather pattern passing through the vast sky of your consciousness. The sky is not damaged by the storm. The storm will pass. By repeatedly applying this wisdom, we begin to flatten the violent peaks and valleys of the emotional roller coaster. Our lives become less like a turbulent ocean and more like a deep lake. The surface may be ruffled by the winds of circumstance, but the depths remain quiet and still. We learn to participate fully in the beautiful, tragic, joyful, and sorrowful dance of human life, but with a new sense of grace and balance. We stop fighting the river of change and learn to flow with it, finding a deep and abiding peace, not in controlling life, but in wisely surrendering to its transient, ever-changing nature. 14. The weight of expectations and the potter's wheel. Let us now investigate a subtle but powerful engine of our discontent: the prison of expectations. Our minds are tireless authors of scripts. We write a detailed script for how our life should unfold. It dictates what our career should look like by a certain age, what our relationships should provide for us, and what we should have achieved. We write scripts for ourselves, casting ourselves in the role of the ideal parent, the successful professional, the perfectly calm and mindful individual. And we write scripts for others, expecting our partners, our children, and our friends to follow the lines we have assigned them. We carry these scripts around with us, holding them up against the messy, unpredictable, and unscripted reality of our lives. And in the gap between our rigid expectations and the raw truth of the moment, the weeds of frustration, resentment, and disappointment grow. This tyranny of should is a primary source of our suffering. When we fall short of our own idealized self-image, we are consumed by self-judgment and shame. When others fail to live up to our expectations of them, we are filled with bitterness and a sense of betrayal. We become so obsessed with the life we think we should have that we are completely unable to see, appreciate, or work with the life we actually have. We are constantly at war with reality, trying to bend and force it into the shape of our preconceived ideas. This is an exhausting and unwinnable war. The path to peace is not found in forcing reality to match our expectations, but in releasing our rigid grip on those expectations and learning to work skillfully with the life that is right here. To explore this, let us imagine a tale of two potters. The first potter is a man of rigid expectation. In his mind, he holds a perfect image of the vase he wants to create. He has drawn it out on paper, its precise height, the exact curve of its belly, the flawless flare of its lip. His studio is sterile and orderly, more like a laboratory than an artist's workshop. He brings a lump of clay to his wheel, and as it begins to spin, his work is an act of domination. His hands are tense, his brow is furrowed. He is not in a dialogue with the clay. He is issuing commands. He is forcing the material to conform to the blueprint in his mind. As the walls of the vase rise, his fingers detect a small impurity in the clay, a tiny grain of sand, an air bubble. To him, this is not just an imperfection, it is a catastrophe. It is a deviation from the script, a flaw in the perfect form he envisioned. A flash of anger goes through him. This clay is defective. The process is ruined. In his frustration, he slams his hand down, crushing the nascent pot. The beautiful form collapses into a lump of mud. He scrapes it off the wheel with a sigh of disgust and throws it into a bucket of failed attempts. A bucket already filled with the shards of other pots that failed to live up to his impossible standard. He is trapped in a cycle of perfectionism and rage, never creating anything real because nothing real can ever match the flawless image in his mind. Now let us imagine a second potter. She is a woman of mindful intention. She, too, has an idea of the kind of vessel she wishes to create. Perhaps a strong, graceful bowl, but it is an intention, not a rigid blueprint. Her studio is a living space, dusty and alive, filled with finished pieces of all shapes and sizes. She brings her lump of clay to the wheel, and as it begins to spin, her work is an act of communion. Her hands are soft but firm. Her focus is deep. She is listening to the clay. She feels its nature, its willingness, its resistance. She is guiding, coaxing, and responding, engaged in a silent, tactile conversation. As the walls of the bowl rise, her fingers, too, encounter an impurity, the same grain of sand, the same air bubble, but her reaction is entirely different. She does not see a flaw. She sees an unexpected moment, a new piece of information, an invitation from the clay to deviate from the original plan. She pauses, feels into it, and then, with skillful hands, she incorporates the imperfection into the design. Perhaps she allows it to create a subtle spiral on the surface, a unique texture that catches the light in a beautiful way. The final pot that she lifts from the wheel is not the perfectly symmetrical bowl she might have first intended. It is something new, something born of the dance between her intention and the reality of the clay. It is unique, authentic, and beautiful, not in spite of its flaw, but because of it. It carries the story of its own creation. Her studio is filled with these perfectly imperfect creations, each one a testament to her graceful collaboration with reality. In this parable, the clay is the raw material of our lives. It is our circumstances, our personality, our history, our body, the present moment. We do not get to choose the fundamental nature of the clay we are given today. The hands of the potter are our practice, our intention, our skillful means. Upaya. The first potter represents our ego mind, attached to its fixed views and ideals. Drishti upadana. It suffers immensely because it is constantly at war with the clay. The second potter represents the awakened mind. She works with wisdom and compassion, transforming the unexpected into the beautiful. Her practice embodies the Zen aesthetic of wabi-sabi. This is a worldview centered on the acceptance of transience and imperfection. It is the ability to see beauty in things that are humble, modest, and unconventional. It finds beauty in the crack of an old tea bowl, in the asymmetry of a handcrafted object, in the patina of age on a wooden gate. It understands that true beauty is not about sterile, machine-like flawlessness, but about the authentic, earthy, and transient nature of things. The second potter is a master of wabi-sabi. She doesn't just tolerate the imperfection of the clay. She honors it and uses it to create something even more beautiful and true. How, then, do we become the second potter in our own lives? The first step is to become aware of our own rigid blueprints. What are the unspoken rules and shoulds that govern your life? Take some time to honestly identify them. I should be more successful. A good mother should never feel angry. My body should look a certain way. Life should be fair. Simply seeing these expectations written down, exposing them to the light of awareness, begins to loosen their unconscious grip on us. The second step is to practice working with the clay when life presents an unexpected impurity. A project at work fails. You have a conflict with a loved one. You make a mistake. Your automatic reaction might be that of the first potter. Anger, blame, self-criticism, the desire to smash the pot and start over. The practice is to pause in that moment. Instead of reacting, get curious. Okay, this is not what I wanted. This is not what I expected. But this is the clay I have in my hands right now. Acknowledge the reality of the situation without immediately judging it as a catastrophe. Then, like the second potter, ask a new set of questions. What is the nature of this situation? What can be learned here? Is there an opportunity hidden in this setback? How can I respond skillfully and compassionately to this, rather than wishing I had a different situation? This applies most powerfully to ourselves. When we fail to live up to our own internal blueprint for a perfect person, instead of smashing the pot of our self-worth, we can practice self-compassion. We can look at our own flaws and imperfections with the gentle, creative hands of the second potter. Ah, here is my impatience again. This is part of my clay today. How can I work with it skillfully, rather than hating it? This transforms the inner life from a battlefield into a creative workshop. Ultimately, this is a path of letting go of the myth of perfection. The goal of a well-lived life is not to produce a flawless, untouchable vase that matches a preconceived drawing. It is to remain engaged in the creative, messy, and beautiful process of shaping the clay of each moment with love, wisdom, and grace. The most beautiful lives, like the most beautiful pottery, are often the ones that bear the marks of their journey, the ones that have learned to turn their cracks into channels for the light to shine through. 15. The unconditional gift, compassion for those who harm us. We have spoken of generosity, of giving from a pure heart, but now we must confront the most challenging territory of the giving spirit. It is easy to give to those we love, or to those we deem worthy. It is far harder to give to those who have caused us pain. When we are wronged, when we are betrayed, when we are treated with cruelty or injustice, the natural human response is to close our hearts. We build a fortress of resentment, and inside that fortress, we nurse our grievance. We replay the offense. We gather evidence for our case. We stoke the fires of our own righteous anger. We believe that holding on to this grudge is a form of justice, that our anger is a weapon we aim at the person who hurt us. But who, in the end, is truly imprisoned by this fortress? Who is drinking the poison of this endless resentment? The person who harmed us may be living their life, oblivious, while we remain chained to the past, tethered to the very event that caused us pain. The act of holding a grudge, while feeling justified, consumes our precious life force. It drains our energy, sours our view of the world, and prevents us from moving forward into the freedom of the present moment. We are told to forgive, but the word often feels hollow, like an impossible demand. It can feel like we are letting the other person off the hook, condoning their action, or betraying the validity of our own pain. But what if forgiveness, and the even deeper practice of compassion for an enemy, is not about them at all? What if it is the ultimate gift we can give to ourselves? What if the highest form of generosity is not the giving of wealth or material goods, but the giving of non-hatred in the face of hatred itself? The Mahayana path explores this profound possibility through many teachings. None more dramatic or powerful than a Jataka Taliya story of one of the Buddha's past lives as a being known as the patient hermit. Imagine a deep, serene forest, a place of immense peace. Living in a simple cave, within this forest was a hermit, a bodhisattva in a past life, who had dedicated himself entirely to spiritual practice. His primary practice was that of Kshanti Paramita, the perfection of patience and forbearance. Through his deep meditation, he had cultivated a mind that was as vast, stable, and imperturbable as the earth itself. He radiated an aura of profound peace that calmed the wild animals and inspired all who met him. The king of this land was a man named Kali. He was the very opposite of the hermit, a cruel, arrogant, and deeply insecure ruler, enslaved by his sensual desires and prone to fits of jealous rage. One day, the king decided to hold an indulgent picnic in the forest for himself and his large court of harem women. After much feasting and drinking, the king fell into a drunken sleep. The women, bored and seeking a diversion, began to wander through the forest. Eventually, they came upon the hermit's cave. They were immediately struck by the palpable aura of peace that surrounded him. They had only ever known the volatile, demanding energy of the king, and here was a being who was utterly serene. They gathered around him, and he began to teach them, speaking simply of the virtues of kindness, patience, and a gentle heart. Sometime later, the king awoke. Finding his harem gone, he flew into a paranoid rage. He tracked the women to the hermit's cave and saw them sitting, captivated, at the hermit's feet. His mind, poisoned by jealousy, could not comprehend what he was seeing. He assumed the hermit was a charlatan, seducing his women with some kind of trickery. He stormed up to the hermit, sword in hand. "You! What are you teaching here?" he demanded. The hermit looked up at the enraged king with perfectly calm, compassionate eyes. "Your Majesty," he replied softly, "I teach only patience and forbearance." The king laughed a cruel laugh. "Patience? We will see about your patience." Determined to break the hermit's infuriating calm, to prove that everyone deep down was as full of rage and fear as he was, the king gave an order to his royal executioner: "Cut off this man's right hand." The order was carried out. The king then turned to the hermit. "Now, false ascetic, what do you teach?" The hermit, his body bleeding, but his mind unshaken, replied, "I teach patience and forbearance." Stunned by this response, the king's rage grew even more intense. "Cut off his other hand," he screamed. And again, he asked, "What do you teach?" And again, the hermit gave the same serene reply. One by one, the cruel king ordered the hermit's feet, his ears, and his nose to be cut off. After each brutal mutilation, he would mockingly ask the same question, and each time the answer was the same: "I teach patience and forbearance." The hermit's mind was not engaged in a struggle to suppress pain or anger. He was in a state of profound compassion. He looked at the king, not as a monster, but as a deeply pitiable being. He saw a man so utterly enslaved by his own inner poison-cheese rage, his jealousy, his insecurity, that he was performing actions that would condemn him to an eternity of future suffering. In that moment, the hermit was the free one. The king, for all his power, was the prisoner, chained by his own hatred. As the hermit lay dying, the king, in a final act of contempt, kicked him in the chest, and left him for dead. The hermit's final thoughts were not a curse. They were not a wish for revenge. They were the ultimate act of unconditional generosity. He looked upon the departing king with a heart full of pity and love, and he made a powerful, sacred vow. This king has offered me a profound opportunity to perfect my patience. As a result of this encounter, I vow that when, in a future life, I finally attain supreme, perfect enlightenment, may this king be the very first being that I seek out and liberate from his suffering. In that moment, the hermit transformed the horrific violence inflicted upon him into the fuel for a compassionate vow. He gave his attacker the most profound gift possible, the promise of future salvation, born from a heart that refused to harbor even a single trace of hatred. This story is breathtaking. It presents an ideal that seems superhuman, far beyond our own capacity, and yet it is the North Star of the Mahayana path. It teaches us about the perfection of patience, kshanti. This patience is not weakness or passivity. It is an immense, immovable strength, a spiritual fortitude that cannot be disturbed by the changing winds of praise or blame, pleasure or pain. It is the strength to separate the actor from the action. The hermit saw that the king's actions were terrible, born of ignorance, but he saw the actor, the being, as someone fundamentally worthy of compassion, someone who, like all beings, possessed a Buddha nature, however deeply buried. This is the key to true forgiveness. It is not about saying, "What you did was okay." It is about saying, "What you did was born of your own suffering and confusion, and I will not allow your suffering to become my own. I will not drink the poison of hatred you have offered me. I release myself from the burden of carrying this anger." Forgiveness, in this light, is not a gift we give to the other person. It is an act of profound self-liberation. It is the gift of freedom we give to ourselves. So how do we, who are not enlightened hermits, begin to practice this? We do not start with our deepest traumas. We start with the small things. We start with the driver who cuts us off, the colleague who is rude, the friend who says a careless word. In that moment, when we feel the flash of anger, can we practice? First, we can give the gift of not retaliating. We can let the chain of harm and anger end with us. We do not have to respond to a harsh word with another harsh word. This simple act of non-reaction is a powerful gift of peace to the world. Second, we can try to see the suffering behind the action. Can we imagine that the rude colleague is having a terrible day or is trapped in their own prison of insecurity? This doesn't excuse their behavior, but it depersonalizes it. It is no longer an attack on us. It is a symptom of their pain. Third, we can redefine forgiveness as uncoupling our well-being from their actions. It is the conscious decision to stop allowing their past actions to control our present happiness. It is taking back our own power. This path is not easy, but the story of the patient hermit reminds us of the boundless capacity of the heart. It shows us that our inner peace does not have to be at the mercy of how others treat us. And it reveals that the greatest, most powerful, and most liberating act of generosity is to offer the unconditional gift of a compassionate and forgiving heart, even in the face of the greatest harm. For in giving that gift, we not only free ourselves, but we become a source of profound healing for the entire world. 16. Healing from betrayal. The parable of the burning house. There is a particular kind of pain that cuts deeper than most others. It is the sting of betrayal. This can be the personal betrayal of a friend, a partner, or a family member, an act that shatters our trust and leaves us feeling profoundly unsafe. But there is another, perhaps more bewildering, form of betrayal. It is the feeling of being betrayed by life itself. We operate under a set of unspoken contracts with the universe. We believe that if we are a good person, if we work hard, if we do everything right, then life should be fair, safe, and predictable. Then, one day, the fire comes. A sudden illness, a tragic accident, the loss of a loved one, a devastating financial setback. The house of our carefully constructed reality begins to burn. In these moments, our core belief system is shaken. I did everything right. We think, so why is this happening to me? It feels like a cosmic injustice, a broken promise. This feeling can extend to our spiritual path. We may begin a practice, like meditation, with the expectation that it will grant us permanent peace and bliss. Then, when we still experience intense anxiety, grief, or anger, we feel betrayed by the practice itself. It's not working, we conclude. This sense of disillusionment can lead to a deep cynicism, a loss of faith, and a feeling of being utterly lost and alone in a universe that seems not only chaotic but also cruel and deceptive. But what if these fires are not a sign of life's betrayal, but a sign of its profound and urgent compassion? The Mahayana tradition offers a powerful parable to help us reframe this experience. The parable of the burning house from the Lotus Sutra. Imagine a very wealthy man who has many children, perhaps 10, 20, or even more. He owns a vast, sprawling mansion. From the outside, it looks magnificent, but it is very old. Its pillars are decaying, its beams are riddled with rot, and it has only one narrow gate for entry and exit. One day, while the man is away on business, a fire breaks out in the mansion. The dry, old wood catches quickly, and soon the entire structure is engulfed in flames. The man rushes home and sees the horrific sight. His heart is seized with terror, for he knows all his beloved children are still inside. He looks and sees them, completely oblivious to the danger. They are engrossed in their games, playing with their favorite toys, chasing each other through the halls, having a wonderful time. They do not see the flames. They do not smell the smoke. They do not feel the heat. They are too attached to their pleasures to notice the impending doom. The father, standing at the single gate, knows he must get them out. His first impulse is to scream, "Fire! The house is burning! Get out now!" But then, his wisdom stops him. He knows his children. They are young and flighty. They won't understand the abstract concept of fire or danger. They will either not believe him, or they will be frightened and run deeper into the house, becoming hopelessly lost. A direct warning will fail. He must use a skillful means, upaya. He must speak their language, the language of desire. So, he calls out to them in a joyful, enticing voice. "Children, come outside quickly. I have a wonderful surprise for you. I have brought you new toys, better than any you have inside. I have beautiful carts for you to play with. There are carts drawn by swift goats, carts drawn by graceful deer, and even magnificent carts drawn by strong bullocks. They are waiting for you right outside the gate. Come out now and get them." The children hear their father's promise. Their minds, which could not grasp the concept of danger, can easily grasp the concept of new, better toys. Excited by the prospect of these wonderful carts, they forget their old games. They begin scrambling and racing each other towards the single gate, eager to get outside and claim their prizes. One by one, they all rush out of the burning house, emerging into the fresh, open air, safe from the flames. Once all his children are gathered safely outside, watching the great house collapse into ash, they turn to their father. "Father, where are the goat carts, the deer carts, and the bullock carts you promised us. The father, his heart filled with joy at their safety, does not give them 3 different kinds of carts. Instead, he presents each and every one of them with something far grander than what he had promised, and far beyond anything they could have imagined. He gives each child a magnificent, great white bullock cart. These carts are huge, swift, and adorned with countless precious jewels. They are all identical, and all of the highest, most supreme quality. The children are ecstatic, their happiness far exceeding what they would have felt from the lesser toys. This rich parable is a map of our spiritual lives. The wealthy man is the Buddha, or the compassionate, awakened nature of reality itself. The children are all of us, sentient beings. The vast, decaying mansion is our ordinary world of samsara, world that can seem appealing and full of pleasures, but which is fundamentally old, unstable, and being consumed by the fires of old age, sickness, death, greed, hatred, and ignorance. The children's toys are our worldly attachments, pursuit of wealth, status, sensory pleasure, and fame. We are so engrossed in these games that we are largely oblivious to the inherent suffering and impermanence of our situation. The fire is the painful truth of existence, the first noble truth of suffering, dukkha. When we experience a krisisa sickness, a lossit is the fire of reality licking at the walls of our house. The Father's compassionate lie about the 3 different carts is the doctrine of upaya, or skillful means. The Buddha offers various teachings and paths, the toy carts, tailored to the different inclinations and capacities of beings. Some may be drawn to the spiritual path by the promise of simple peace of mind, a goat cart. Others may be drawn by the promise of creating good karma and securing a happy rebirth, a deer cart. Still others may be drawn by the ideal of solitary liberation, a bullock cart. These are not false promises. They are effective strategies that lure us away from our dangerous attachments and out of the burning house. The great white bullock cart, given to everyone equally, represents the ultimate teaching of the Mahayana, the one vehicle, Ekayana. It is the supreme path that leads to the full enlightenment of a Buddha, a state of liberation and joy far grander than the lesser goals we might have initially sought. This parable teaches us how to heal our sense of betrayal. The fires of life, illnesses, our losses, our heartbreaks are not a sign that life has broken its contract with us. They are the compassionate call of the Father. They are the smoke that alerts us to the fact that the house is, and always has been, on fire. The pain is not a punishment. It is a mercy. It is the force that urges us to stop playing with our perishable toys and seek the safety of the gate. The practice, then, when you feel betrayed by hardship, is to shift your perspective. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" we can learn to ask, "What is this fire trying to burn away? What toy am I clinging to so tightly that this pain is necessary to get my attention? What gate is this suffering urging me to run towards?" This reframes your crisis from a meaningless tragedy into a profound spiritual opportunity. It transforms you from a victim into a seeker. The skillful lies of the path can also be understood. Perhaps you started meditating just to lower your blood pressure. That was your goat cart. But in the process of practicing, you discover a deeper capacity for compassion and a profound insight into the nature of your own mind. You are led by a simple desire to the great white bullock cart of wisdom. The relationship that ends in painful betrayal may be the very fire that burns away your dependence on external validation, leading you to the great cart of finding true self-worth within. When you feel lost, disillusioned, or betrayed by life, remember this parable. Remember that you are a beloved child in a burning house. The pain you feel is not a sign of life's cruelty. but evidence of its urgent, compassionate, and incredibly skillful love. A love that will use any means necessary to guide you out of the flames and into a state of freedom and joy that is more vast, more real, and more beautiful than any of the toys you could ever imagine. 17. The search for the self and the tale of the onion. There is a question that whispers at the heart of the human experience. It is a question that has launched 1,000 spiritual quests, filled countless journals, and been the silent preoccupation of our quietest moments. The question is, who am I, really? We live in a culture that is obsessed with this search for the authentic self. We try to find it in our careers, in our relationships, in our hobbies, in our political beliefs. We build an identity out of these external labels and roles, creating a collage of characteristics that we present to the world and to ourselves as me. We have a deeply ingrained sense that underneath all these layers our changing body, our fluctuating emotions, our shifting thoughts, there must be a solid, continuous, and independent core. We imagine a little person inside, the CEO of our being, the thinker of our thoughts, and the feeler of our feelings. This search is fueled by a deep longing for stability and truth. We believe that if we could just find and connect with this real me, this essential self, we would finally feel whole, grounded, and authentic. But this quest can also be a source of immense anxiety. What if we don't like the self we find? What if it's flawed or broken? Or, even more frightening, what if we search and we can't seem to find anything solid at all? This can lead to a feeling of being a fraud, of being lost, of lacking a core. We then spend our lives defending this fragile sense of self, polishing its story, and protecting it from anything that might threaten it. But what if the entire premise of the search is based on a misunderstanding? What if the reason we can't find a fixed, permanent self is simply because one doesn't exist? The Buddhist path offers a radical and ultimately liberating perspective on this quest, often illustrated through a simple, modern teaching parable, the tale of the onion. A student, after many years of study and practice, came to their Zen master in a state of frustration. "Master," the student said, "I have been meditating. I have been studying. I have been trying to be a better person, but I still haven't found my true, essential self. I feel like I'm just peeling away layers of conditioning, but I never get to the core of who I am. Please, help me find my true self." The master listened with a gentle smile, then went to the kitchen and returned with a large, ordinary onion. "Your true self," the master said, placing the onion in the student's hand. "It is in there. Find it." The student was perplexed, but had deep faith in their teacher. They sat down and began the task. They peeled off the first layer, the dry, papery skin. The master asked, "Is that yourself?" "No," said the student. "That is just the outer covering, like my reputation or the way the world sees me. It's not the real me." So, they peeled it away. They came to the first fleshy layer of the onion. The master asked, "Is this yourself, this physical form?" The student thought for a moment. "No, master. This is like my body. My body was once small, and it will one day grow old and decay. It changes constantly. It cannot be my unchanging, true self." And so, they peeled away the layer of the body. The next layer was revealed. "Perhaps this is yourself," the master suggested. "Your feelings, your sensations." The student considered this. "No, master. My feelings are like the weather. One moment I feel happy, the next sad. One moment I feel pleasure, the next pain. They are fleeting visitors. They cannot be the real, abiding me. And so, they peeled away the layer of feelings. On and on it went. The next layer was perception, the labels of good and bad, like and dislike that the student placed on the world. But these too were seen as learned and conditioned, not essential. So, that layer was peeled away. The next layer was the vast and turbulent realm of thoughts, beliefs, and mental formations. Surely, I am my thoughts, the student felt. But the master gently questioned, do you control every thought that enters your mind? Are your opinions the same today as they were 10 years ago? Thoughts are like clouds passing through the vast sky of the mind. They are not the sky itself. And so, the layer of thoughts was peeled away. The student peeled away the layer of their roles. The role of student, of child, of friend. These were temporary functions, not an essential identity. They peeled away the layer of memories, recognizing that memories are just fallible stories about a past that no longer exists. Layer after layer was removed, each one examined and found to be impermanent, conditioned, and not the true self they were looking for. Finally, the student peeled off the very last tiny, tender layer from the center of the onion. And then there was nothing. Their hands were empty. There was no pit, no seed, no essential onion core at the center. There was only the lingering, pungent scent of the onion and the tears that the process had brought to their eyes. The student looked at the master in bewilderment. Master, I have peeled the whole onion, but where is the onion? The master smiled with great compassion. You have understood. There was never an onion core. The onion was nothing more than the sum of its layers. Its existence was in the coming together of all those interdependent parts. There is no onion separate from the layers. And now, the master said, gesturing to the student's empty hands, you have found your true self. This is the heart of the Buddhist teaching of anatta, or no self. It is not a nihilistic declaration that you don't exist. You clearly do. Like the onion, you have a form, you have feelings, you have thoughts, but the teaching suggests that you do not exist as a separate, permanent, independent entity. A little homunculus pulling the levers inside your head. When we look for this fixed self, we cannot find it. What we call a self is what Buddhism analyzes as the 5 skandhas, or aggregates. These are the layers of the onion. 1. Form, your physical body. 2. Feeling, your raw sensations of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. 3. Perception, the mental process of labeling and recognizing things. 4. Mental formations, your thoughts, habits, opinions, beliefs, and volitions. 5. Consciousness, the basic faculty of awareness that knows the other 4. You are the dynamic, ever-changing process of these 5 things interacting together. You are not a noun, you are a verb. You are not a thing, you are an event. This might sound frightening, but it is, in fact, the most liberating news in the world. If there is no fixed, solid, permanent self, it means that you are not permanently defined by any of your layers. You are not your past mistakes. You are not your trauma. You are not your anger, your anxiety, or your depression. You are not your fleeting thoughts or your changing beliefs. These are simply layers of the onion, conditions that have arisen due to causes and will pass away when the causes change. This means that change, growth, and transformation are always possible. You are not a stone statue, fixed for eternity. You are a flowing river, constantly in a process of becoming. The practice, then, is not to find yourself, but to see through the illusion of the self you think you are. You can do this through a gentle self-inquiry. When a strong emotion arises, instead of saying, "I am angry," you can practice noting, "There is a feeling of anger here." This creates a space. It allows you to see that you are the awareness in which the anger is happening, not the anger itself. When a difficult thought arises, you can see it as just a thought, a cloud passing through the mind, rather than an absolute truth about who you are. This understanding allows us to hold our own identity with a much lighter grip. We become less defensive because there is no fragile thing to defend. We become more resilient because we know that our painful feelings and thoughts will pass. We become more compassionate towards others because we see that they too are not solid, fixed entities, but are processes of becoming, just like us. The search for the true self ends when we realize there is no fixed self to find. And in that failure, in those empty hands, we find something far greater, the boundless freedom to grow, to change, and to connect with the world without the barrier of a separate, defended ego. We find that our true nature is not a tiny, solid core, but a vast, open, and spacious awareness, capable of holding the entire universe. 18. Patience in a world of instant gratification. The farmer and the seed. We have been conditioned to live in a world of the immediate. We carry devices in our pockets that grant us instant access to information, entertainment, and communication. We have become accustomed to on-demand everything. This has trained our minds to operate on a new timeline, the timeline of instant gratification. We want what we want, and we want it now. This microwave mindset, while convenient for ordering groceries or watching a movie, becomes a profound source of suffering when we apply it to the deeper, more meaningful aspects of our lives. We bring this expectation of instant results to our personal growth, our relationships, and our spiritual paths. We plant a seed of change in the soil of our lives, perhaps a commitment to be more mindful, a new health regimen, or the beginning of a meditation practice, and we expect to see a full-grown tree the next morning. When we meditate for a week and our mind is still busy, we declare, "This isn't working." When we try to be more patient with our family, fail once, and revert to an old habit, we conclude, "I'm a hopeless case." We live in a state of constant, low-grade frustration with the pace of our own becoming. This lack of patience, this inability to trust in slow, organic processes, is one of the primary reasons we abandon the very paths that could lead to our deepest healing and freedom. We are constantly digging up the seeds to see if they are growing, and in doing so, we ensure that they never will. The wisdom traditions offer a powerful antidote to this frantic impatience. It is the wisdom of the farmer, the wisdom of patient trust. Let us explore this through a tale of two farmers. Imagine two farmers who are each given a single, identical seed. They are told that this is a miracle seed, capable of growing into a magnificent tree that will provide shade, fruit, and beauty for generations. The first farmer is a man of the modern age. He is full of ambition, energy, and a desire for rapid, measurable results. He takes his miracle seed and plants it with great enthusiasm. He expects a miracle. The next morning, he rushes out to his field and sees nothing but bare earth. A flicker of anxiety goes through him. He waters the spot 10 times, far more than is needed, believing that more effort will equal faster growth. The next day, still seeing nothing, his anxiety turns to suspicion. Is the seed defective? Am I doing it wrong? He carefully digs up the tiny seed to inspect it. breaking its first delicate, nascent roots in the process. Reassured that it is still there, he buries it again. He begins to shout at the patch of earth, "Grow! What's taking so long?" He sees the fast-growing weeds in the next field and feels a pang of envy and failure. After a week of this frantic, demanding behavior, with no visible results, he gives up in disgust. He declares the seed a fraud, rips it from the ground, and goes off in search of a new, faster miracle, a life hack for growing a tree. His field is left scarred with shallow, abandoned holes, a testament to his impatience. Now imagine the second farmer. She is a woman who has spent her life in partnership with the land. She is weathered, calm, and her movements are slow and deliberate. She understands that she is a collaborator with nature, not its commander. She, too, is given the miracle seed. Her approach is entirely different. First, she spends a long time preparing the soil. She removes the large stones and weeds. She enriches the earth with compost. She is creating the most welcoming and nourishing conditions possible for growth to occur. This is an act of faith and foresight. She plants the seed with a quiet reverence, not with a demand for a result, but with a feeling of gentle hope. And then, she trusts. She knows that the most important work is now happening invisibly, underground, far from her anxious eyes. She does not dig up the seed to check on it. Her effort is consistent, not intense. She provides the right amount of water at the right time. She sits near the spot, and with her presence, she protects the unseen process, gently removing any new weeds that might choke the future sprout. She does not compare her patch of earth to any other. This is her seed, her soil, her journey. She waits, she watches, she trusts. She knows that her job is to provide the right conditions, but the life force, the growth itself, comes from the mysterious nature of the seed and its connection to the great, slow rhythms of the sun, the rain, and the earth. For a long time, nothing appears to happen. Then one day, a tiny, vibrant green sprout, almost too small to see, pushes its way through the soil. The farmer sees it, and a quiet smile touches her lips. She does not celebrate wildly or demand that it grow into a tree by next week. She simply continues her gentle, patient, consistent care. Season after season, through sun and storm, through periods of rapid growth and seasons of apparent dormancy, she tends to her commitment. And over the course of many years, the seed fulfills its potential, growing into the strong, magnificent, fruit-bearing tree it was always destined to be. This parable is a direct teaching on the nature of our inner work. We are both the farmer and the field. The seed is our innate potential for awakening, our Buddha nature. It is also any specific quality we wish to cultivate: patience, compassion, wisdom. The seed already contains the entire blueprint for the magnificent tree. Our work is not to force it, but to become the second farmer. Preparing the soil is the work of creating a wholesome life. It is the practice of ethical conduct, silapacting, in ways that are non-harming to ourselves and others, which creates a stable and peaceful mind, the perfect soil for wisdom to grow. The gentle, consistent watering and weeding is our daily practice, bhavana. This is our meditation, our acts of kindness, our moments of self-reflection. The key is consistency and gentleness, not frantic, ego-driven intensity. 5 minutes of quiet meditation every single day is far more potent than a strained 2-hour session once a month. It is the steady, gentle rain that seeps deep into the earth, not the violent flash flood that runs off the surface. The second farmer's patience is a perfect embodiment of Kshanti Paramita, the perfection of patience. It is not a passive, gritting your teeth kind of waiting. It is an active and profound trust in a natural process. It is the wisdom to know what is our work to do and what is not. Our work is to create the conditions. The growth itself belongs to a rhythm far greater than our ego's demanding timeline. Spiritual development is not a mechanical, linear process. It is organic. There will be seasons of apparent dormancy, like a tree in winter. From the outside, nothing seems to be happening. But this is often when the most important work is being done, the strengthening of the root system, the gathering of energy for the next phase of growth. The impatient farmer gives up in the winter. The wise farmer trusts the winter and knows it is essential for the spring. So, how can we cultivate this patient, trusting heart in our own lives? First, practice planting one seed at a time. In our enthusiasm, we often try to change everything about ourselves at once. This is a recipe for overwhelm and failure. Choose one small, specific quality or habit. Perhaps it's the seed of not complaining for one day, or the seed of taking 3 mindful breaths before answering an email. Focus your gentle, consistent energy there. Second, learn to trust the underground process. When you are engaged in a practice and you don't see immediate, dramatic results, bring the image of the second farmer to mind. Remind yourself that you are building new neural pathways. You are weakening the roots of old, unskillful habits, and you are nourishing the deep soil of your heart. This work is invisible, but it is real, and it is crucial. Have faith. Third, celebrate the sprout. We often get discouraged because we are only looking for the full-grown tree. We want perfect enlightenment, complete freedom from anxiety, unshakable peace. When we don't get that, we feel we have failed. The practice is to learn to see and celebrate the tiny green sprouts of progress. The one time you chose a kind response over a reactive one. The fleeting moment of genuine peace you felt in your meditation. The small act of generosity you performed. Acknowledging these small successes provides the encouragement to continue the journey. True, deep, and lasting change cannot be hacked or forced. It is not a product of frantic effort or demanding willpower. It is the natural result of creating the right conditions and then allowing the inherent wisdom within your own miracle seed to unfold in its own mysterious and beautiful time. Our role is simply to be the patient, faithful, and loving farmer of our own heart. 19. The beauty of imperfection. The golden seams of kintsugi. Our modern world is in the grips of a cult of perfection. We are taught from a very young age to hide our flaws, to mask our vulnerabilities, and to present a polished, flawless facade to the world. We are told that to be valuable, we must be perfect. Any crack in this facade, failure in our career, a struggle with mental health, a physical scar, a broken heart is seen as a source of immense shame. It is evidence of our inadequacy, a defect that must be hidden away at all costs. We treat our lives as if they were products on a shelf, and we believe that no one will want us if they see the slightest scratch or dent. When life inevitably breaks us, as it breaks everyone, our first instinct is to do one of two things. We either throw the broken pieces of ourselves away in despair, believing we are now permanently damaged and worthless, or we frantically try to glue the pieces back together, sanding down the edges and painting over the cracks, hoping that no one will ever know we were once shattered. We live in constant fear of being found out, of someone seeing the cracks beneath our carefully constructed mask. This is an exhausting and lonely way to live. It prevents true intimacy, as we can never allow anyone to see the real, scarred, and beautifully human parts of ourselves. But what if there is another way? What if our brokenness and the healing that follows is not a source of shame, but the very source of our greatest beauty and strength? There is a profound and beautiful philosophy embedded in the ancient Japanese art form of kintsugi, which literally means to join with gold. It offers a revolutionary path to healing and self-acceptance. The art of kintsugi begins with a tragedy, a cherished piece of pottery, a beautiful teacup, a beloved bowl falls and shatters into pieces. This is the moment of crisis, of loss, of heartbreak. The object's life as a perfect thing is over. The common response would be to sweep up the shards and discard them. But this is where the kintsugi master's work begins. The first step is the patient and mindful act of gathering every single piece. No shard is too small or insignificant to be saved. This, in itself, is an act of profound respect. It is a declaration that the broken object is still valuable, that its history matters, that all of its parts are worthy of being kept. The next step is the slow, meticulous process of rejoining the pieces. This is not done with a quick fix superglue. It is done with a special lacquer derived from the sap of a tree, which takes weeks or even months to cure and harden properly. This is the work of healing. It is slow. It requires immense patience, and it cannot be rushed. Each piece must be fitted perfectly into its place, held with care until the bond is secure. The final and most transformative step is what gives the art its name. After the pieces are securely joined and the lacquer is dry, the artist takes a fine brush and paints over the seams of the cracks with this same lacquer, and then dusts them with a fine powder of pure gold, silver, or platinum. The cracks are not hidden. They are not disguised. They are illuminated. They are highlighted, celebrated, and transformed into the most beautiful feature of the object. The lines of breakage become golden rivers that trace the unique history of the piece. The result is breathtaking. The repaired object is not considered as good as new. It is understood to be more beautiful, more valuable, and more interesting than it was before it was broken. Its history of damage and repair is now the very source of its unique, irreplaceable beauty. It is a testament to resilience, a celebration of the journey of life itself. This art form is not just about pottery. It is a profound metaphor for the human experience. We are the ceramic vessels, and life, with its inevitable challenges, will at some point cause us to break. We will experience failure, heartbreak, loss, and trauma. These are the moments when our idealized, perfect self shatters. The philosophy of kintsugi teaches us how to heal, not by erasing these breaks, but by illuminating them with the gold of our own awakened hearts. The golden lacquer is the wisdom, compassion, and resilience that we gain precisely because we have been broken. It is the gold of understanding. The person who has never had their heart broken cannot truly understand the depths of another's sorrow. The person who has never failed cannot truly appreciate the courage it takes to try again. Our wounds, once healed, become the source of our deepest compassion. The cracks in our own hearts become the very openings through which we can connect with the hearts of others. This is the gold. The resilience learned from surviving a difficult time is gold. The self-knowledge gained from navigating a dark night of the soul is gold. The humility born from failure is gold. The empathy that blossoms from our own pain is gold. We do not acquire this gold in spite of our suffering. We distill it directly from our suffering. The cracks are where the light gets in, and the cracks are where the gold is applied. So how do we practice this spiritual kintsugi on our own hearts and minds? The first step is gathering the pieces. This is the practice of radical acceptance. It means we stop disowning the broken parts of our story. We stop pretending our past traumas or failures didn't happen. We gently and courageously turn towards our history, not with judgment, but with a compassionate desire to understand. It means acknowledging all the parts of ourselves, the scared parts, the angry parts, the wounded parts, and recognizing that they all belong. They are all precious shards of our whole being. The second step is the slow mending with the lacquer of self-compassion. When the pain of an old wound surfaces, our habit might be to push it away or to judge ourselves for still feeling it. The kintsugi practice is to meet that pain with unwavering kindness. It is the slow, patient work of tending to our inner world, perhaps through therapy, meditation, journaling, or sharing our stories with trusted friends. It is understanding that real healing, like the curing of the lacquer, takes time and cannot be rushed. We hold our own broken pieces with a gentle and loving hand until they begin to feel whole again. The third and most transformative step is to find and apply the gold. This is the practice of reflective wisdom. It is looking back at our most difficult experiences and asking, what did I learn? How did I grow? What strength was forged in this fire? We ask, how has this heartbreak made me more compassionate? What did this failure teach me that I could not have learned from success? How has surviving this illness deepened my appreciation for the simple gift of a healthy day? When we can begin to see the wisdom and strength that were born directly from our hardships, we are applying the gold. We are transforming the narrative of our life from I am broken to I am resilient and my scars are the proof. Finally, the kintsugi master does not hide the repaired bowl in a dark cupboard. They display it proudly. This is an invitation for us to stop hiding our scars. When we have done the work of healing, sharing our story of brokenness and repair becomes a profound act of generosity. It tells the people around us, you are not alone in your brokenness. Healing is possible, and your scars can become your greatest beauty. Our vulnerability, when shared from a place of wisdom, becomes one of our most powerful gifts to the world. Our culture teaches us to be ashamed of our cracks. Kintsugi teaches us to see them as the most beautiful, most truthful, most precious part of who we are. You are not beautiful in spite of your history of being broken. You are beautiful because of it. Your life is not a product to be kept in flawless condition. It is a unique and sacred vessel, and its golden seams, the testament to every time you have shattered and lovingly put yourself back together, are what make you truly, magnificently, and incomparably priceless. 20. The ultimate letting go, the lotus in the fire. We have come on a long journey together, exploring the stories and ideas that help us to let go of the burdens we carry. We arrive now at the final letting go, the one that is perhaps the most subtle and the most liberating of all. It is the letting go of the very idea of escape. Deep within the minds of many of us, there is a quiet belief that peace, happiness, or enlightenment is somewhere else. It is a destination, a state we will arrive at after we have sorted out our lives, after we have solved all our problems, or after we have escaped to a mountain monastery or a long silent retreat. We create a fundamental duality in our minds. On one side is Samsarathis world, our stressful jobs, our complicated relationships, our bills, our anger, our grief. We see this as the mudmassy, chaotic, impure, and the source of all our suffering. On the other side is Nirvanathi, other shore, a perfect state of perpetual peace, free from problems, free from stress. We see this as the pure, clean air above the pond. And because of this duality, we see our present life as an obstacle to our spiritual practice. We think, I will find peace when this project is over, or when I have more money, or if only I could get away from all this. We postpone our liberation indefinitely, making the present moment itself the enemy of the peace we seek. Buddhism, particularly the Mahayana tradition, challenges this duality with one of its most potent and beautiful symbols, the lotus flower. The lotus does not grow in a clean, well-tended field. It rises from the dark, murky, smelly bottom of a pond. Its roots are anchored in the mud. This mud, with all its decay and messiness, is not a mistake or an obstacle to the lotus's growth. It is the very source of the nutrients, the rich food that the lotus requires to grow. The mud is the condition for its blossoming. The stem then pushes its way up through the murky water, navigating the currents and the darkness, and finally, it blooms on the surface, a perfect, radiant, and spotless flower. Its petals are undefiled by the very mud that nourished it. This is the first and most powerful image. Purity can arise from impurity. Enlightenment can grow from the messy, complex soil of our human lives. Our difficulties are not a barrier to our awakening. They are the necessary fertilizer for it. But the Mahayana tradition takes this a step further, a step deeper. It offers an even more radical image. Not just the lotus in the mud, but the lotus in the fire. This is the ideal of the bodhisattva. The bodhisattva does not simply seek to escape the mud for the clean air of a private nirvana. Instead, out of infinite compassion, the bodhisattva chooses to remain in the world, in the very burning house we have discussed. The bodhisattva chooses to bloom in the very heart of the fire of samsara. What does this mean? It means the bodhisattva willingly engages with the most difficult aspects of life, the suffering of others, the injustice of the world, the chaos of human emotion, not as something to be escaped, but as the very arena of their practice and liberation. The fire of passion, aggression, and ignorance is not something to be extinguished and run away from. Instead, the very energy of those fires, through the alchemy of wisdom and compassion, can be transmuted into the light of enlightenment and the warmth of love. The bodhisattva path is not one of escape, but of radical engagement. This leads us to one of the most profound realizations of the Mahayana path. Nirvana is samsara. Based on the understanding of emptiness, shunyata, there is no inherent ontological difference between the conditioned world, samsara, and the unconditioned state of liberation, nirvana. They are not two different places. They are two ways of seeing the same reality. Samsara is seeing reality through the distorted lens of greed, hatred, and ignorance. Nirvana is seeing that very same reality with the clear eyes of wisdom and compassion. The change is not in the world. The change is in our perception. Peace is not a place where there is no noise, trouble, or hard work. It is the ability to be in the midst of noise, trouble, and hard work, and still be in touch with a deep, centered peace in your heart. The ultimate liberation is not to escape from your life, but to fall completely in love with your life, exactly as it is. It is to realize that your stressful job is the dojo for practicing patience. Your difficult relative is your guru for compassion. The traffic jam is your meditation hall for learning to let go of control. Your anxiety is your invitation to investigate the nature of the mind. Your entire life, with all its messiness, beauty, and pain, is the path. There is no other path. So, how do we practice this? How do we bloom where we are planted, even when the ground feels like it is on fire? First, we must completely reframe our perspective. We must stop seeing the difficulties of our lives as obstacles to our peace and begin to see them as the path itself. When a challenge arises, instead of the first reaction being, "Why is this happening to me? I need to get away from this," we can learn to pause and gently ask, "What is the lotus seed trying to sprout here? What nutrients are contained in this mud? What attachment of mine is this fire burning away?" This questioning transforms us from a passive victim to an active participant in our own awakening. Second, we practice finding the stillness in the midst of movement. We don't have to wait for a free hour or a quiet room to practice. The practice can be found in the space between two breaths, while you wait for the traffic light to change. It can be found in the sensation of warm water on your hands as you wash a dish. It is the conscious choice to bring your full attention back to the radical simplicity of this moment, and this moment, and this moment. By anchoring in the simplicity of the present, we find the still point in the turning world. The monastery is not a building on a mountain. It is the space between two thoughts. Third, we learn to find the nutrients in the mud. Look back on your life. What have been your greatest challenges? A painful breakup, a career failure, a battle with illness? Now see if you can find the hidden gift in those experiences. Perhaps the breakup taught you self-reliance. The failure taught you humility. The illness gave you a profound appreciation for the simple gift of a healthy day. When we begin to see that our greatest growth has often come from our greatest difficulties, we stop cursing the mud and begin to feel gratitude for its nutrients. The ultimate letting go is not letting go of our attachments to bad things. It is letting go of our attachment to the very idea of a good thing somewhere else. It is the abandoning of the search for a future nirvana in order to realize the truth that the nature of nirvana, peace, clarity, and freedom is already available right here, right now, as the true nature of our own mind. It is not something we achieve. It is something we return to. You do not need to extinguish the fire of your life to find peace. You only need to realize that you are the lotus, capable of blooming in the midst of it. The peace you are seeking is not the absence of the conditions of life. It is the presence of an open, compassionate, and wise heart that can embrace all of those conditions without being destroyed by them. Liberation is not leaving the world, but loving the world so completely that you realize you were never separate from it in the first place. The open hand. We began this journey together with the image of a hand clenched around a stone, a mind caught in the tension of holding on. We have traveled through forests and across rivers, through the palaces of kings and the heart of burning houses. We have listened to sages and farmers and bodhisattvas. We have explored the pains of anger, of loss, of comparison, and of fear. And now, we return, but not to the same place we started. Imagine yourself again, in that situation, stuck in traffic, the phone buzzing, the mind racing. But now, something is different. You have been given a new set of tools. You look at the driver who cut you off, and instead of an antagonist, you see an empty boat, adrift on the currents of its own suffering. You feel a wave of anxiety about the future, and you hear the gentle whisper of the farmer, "Maybe, we will see." You feel the weight of a past mistake, and you remember the old Zen master who put the woman down by the river hours ago. You feel the pressure to be perfect, and you remember the beauty of the golden seams in the kintsugi bowl. You feel overwhelmed by the world's problems, and you feel 1,000 compassionate arms extending from your own heart. The external world has not changed. There is still traffic, There are still demands. There is still impermanence. But your inner landscape has begun to shift. The stone in your hand doesn't feel so heavy anymore. You realize that the problem was never the stone. The problem was the clenching. And now you see that you have a choice. Enlightenment is not a single, explosive, flashy event. It is not an arrival at a state of permanent perfection. It is the slow, gentle, sometimes backsliding process of learning to open your hand. It is happening right now. It is the choice in this moment to meet your pain with compassion instead of resistance. It is the choice to meet your joy with appreciation instead of clinging. It is the choice to see your own lotus nature in the very mud of your daily life. The path outlined in these stories is not a path out of your life. It is a path deeper into it. It is an invitation to love this world exactly as it is, with all its messiness, its beauty, its pain, and its potential, and to love yourself exactly as you are, not as a project to be fixed, but as a perfect, imperfect being on a journey home to the truth of your own vast, luminous, and free nature. Take a deep breath, and as you exhale, gently open your hand.